Okay.
So actually, work with hello. Yeah, we're working with Mike.
Oh, and this is the
Yeah, and he was there. No, I have. So I.
Oh,
Yeah.
this.
Exactly, exactly, that's my. Yeah.
How are you? You would be the only one.
So number four.
So I was
The only public hearing we have is that.
number
very
one,
first
so I'm agenda one.
Yep, you can just write zoning ordinance.
Okay.
I think all your comments are. Thank you. Oh, you're.
Yes.
Nice to see you.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for all your.
Oh.
I know.
Well, it's all right.
And she
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the long way through it, you know, you guys know what you're doing. So I think, as far as.
Good evening.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Okay, how are you?
Excellent, thank you.
Very under everyone else.
That's okay. Hello. All right, how are you?
How you doing?
I forgot my tea.
That does sound delightful.
Today I said, I hope you will enjoy my tea.
I was on the PTA meeting and superintendent was speaking to us. She's very smart. She was talking about housing being a problem.
Oh, yeah.
Because we're not getting families that can find affordable housing. Like, I didn't say anything, but I thought. So,
But you got it.
good evening.
hurled past one another with less than 30 feet separation. Halls.
Bruce,
Here.
Erdman Hermans,
Here.
Harp,
Here.
Paniro,
Here.
and Mayor Kuhn is present. Summers is absent and excused.
Okay. Looking at the approval of the minutes, do we have any changes or comments from the commission? Okay. Seeing none, I will approve the minutes. And moving to the public hearings, it is 7:01. Hearing on changes to zoning ordinance, chapter 10, and map sign ordinance, chapter 22, and outdoor lighting ordinance, chapter 33. As I open this hearing, I'm going to ask staff to give an overview on the topics in front of us.
Thank you, Mayor Kuhn. We have been at this project for over a couple of years now. I'm Mark Opitz. I'm the city planner and zoning administrator, and my colleagues and I have been working hard on this, but I've been the project lead working with our consultant Vandewell and Associates. And I have, I'm not going to go through everything that was in the meeting packet, but I do want to touch on a few things tonight. So if you could go to a couple slides. This is just for those of you who didn't see the meeting packet. This presentation is under the public hearing section, and it's broken into these 5 categories. Again, 2 years we've been at this. Our current zoning ordinance is very old. It's dates back to the 1980s, and with very little updates since then.
Election calendar, plan commission.
Most of us, most of the development in the city that's happened over the last 40 years has been in our planned development districts, which is a type of zoning classification that's basically customized for each unique planned development district. Has a unique set of regulations. And we relied on that heavily because the standard zoning classifications like R1, B1, that sort of thing, didn't fit the bill for the type of development that the market was bringing to the city and that the community was requesting. It's been very hard to administer that many PDDs, and one of the goals of this project was to try establish new zoning classifications that would reduce the reliance on PDDs. Our comprehensive plan, which we adopted 2 years ago and is going through an amendment process now before the council after a lot of work by this body here. One of the key recommendations in that plan was to rewrite our zoning ordinance to help implement the comprehensive plan. And the goals of that project are reflected on the screen here. Again, this is in the packet. Plan has a lot of innovation to it, and a lot of emphasis on sustainability, infill development, supporting development along our arterials, our key corridors, travel corridors where we have transit. And also with this project, we saw a need to update our code to make it compliant with state and federal law changes. To create the zoning map, we took the existing zoning classifications, the existing zoning map, the upper left corner. We also took into consideration our future land use map and the comprehensive plan. And then staff, the 3 of us here, worked a couple different occasions to prepare the zoning ordinance, the zoning map, excuse me, the proposed zoning map. And this I do want to add is an older version of it. I forgot to update this image, but this was from when we first released the zoning map in September. We've already made a couple changes to it since then. I thought it'd be useful, since there's been some public input on this, to summarize how the new zoning code and map would affect a particular type of property. First of all lots and structures in the city will become fully conforming. That's Article 5 of the code, talks about non-conforming uses and how it handles those. So that is one key principle. This won't affect repair and maintenance of existing development. It will only affect new construction and any changes to land use. So these are the scenarios that I'm going to very briefly touch on. If you're wishing to repair or maintain your house, again, the existing property becomes fully legal. I know that's been a concern raised by a lot of Middleton Beach Road residents recently. So that is something that the code will ensure, is that existing property is fully legal. Reconstruction permitted to occur to match the existing development of the property today. Any new construction and land use changes are subject to the zoning ordinance. So if you want to add an addition, it's subject to the new ordinance. If there's new construction on existing developed property, in other words, redevelopment, they would have to be built in accordance with the zoning regulations that pertain to that property for setback, impervious surface, and various dimensional standards. One of the things I really like about this new code is how it's organized. We have in Article 2 all of our zoning classifications that are being proposed. Every property in the city that's not located in a planned development district is going to have a new zoning classification. And those are all defined in Article 2. The land use, every classification will have a list of permitted land uses and conditional land uses. Conditional means it has to go through a public hearing. Adjoining property owners are notified, property owners within 200 feet. And all those land use regulations then are explained and defined better in Article 3 in alphabetical order by land use category. So it's very easy to find things. There's a lot of cross references. Go on, please. Third scenario is a vacant property, or if it's being redeveloped. Again, similar to the last one, all the new standards apply of the zoning code. For commercial properties, anything that's 3 residential units or greater, the Plan Commission, this body here, has design review authority, and we require building design standards that are outlined in Article 6, and Article 8 has landscaping standards. We also have, as part of this project, we are updating our sign ordinance and our outdoor lighting ordinance. If a new lot is being created, then that's very straightforward. All the zoning standards apply based on what is classified. We're hoping that we don't have too many more planned development districts, but we still have that as an option in the future, because we recognize that sometimes one size doesn't, that one of the zoning classifications might not fit. And so we still have the planned unit development process available as a resource going forward. So in summary, the key changes are: we're establishing new zoning districts that allow diversity of modern building types and formats. We're modernizing the land uses to allow a mixing of uses. For example, all the property west of Parmenter Street, if you think of where Culver's is, for example, Bruce Company, everything there has never allowed housing per se. And so that's an area that we have mapped now to allow a higher density of mixed uses, even buildings potentially up to 10 stories, because it's near the highway. That's not an area where there's any single family or 2 family residences. So that's an area where we are really promoting a mix of uses, as well as all of our major travel corridors like Century Avenue, University, and Allen. The zoning code also is really trying to emphasize a key issue facing the city and our region as a whole, which is a missing middle housing, housing that is more accessible to people of middle income. We have a shortage of that, as most of us are well aware. We also are changing to a system of impervious surface ratios instead of relying on the nebulous lot coverage. So in the past, we used lot coverage, which really wasn't overly well defined. It was defined, but it didn't really help us much. It counted a residence, a structure, a deck, a patio, that sort of thing, a shed, but it did not count the driveway. So we are instead going to a standard for impervious surface area that we feel is much more useful for measuring the impact of a property and relating to stormwater management, that sort of thing, in open space. In a general sense, our new zoning classifications reduce minimum lot sizes. Gone will be the one size residential minimum size of 7,200 square feet. which is being replaced with 3 different zoning classifications for single family. And those are 7,200 feet, 5,000 square feet, and 3,000 square feet. As I mentioned already, increasing the height and density along major street corridors. We're also introducing new parking minimums as well as some maximums. And for the first time, we're establishing bicycle parking standards. This is an example from our new code, really helpful table that if you haven't looked at it yet, I think you would really find it helpful. It's found at the beginning of Article 3. It has all the new zoning classifications across the top and the different land uses that are permitted down the right side. Both the types of land use as well as accessory uses like putting up a gazebo or a pergola, that sort of thing, clothesline even. Just go on here. We also are, as I mentioned earlier, with our comp plan, we really are promoting sustainability initiatives. So we have in this code identified opportunities for alternative energy production and EV parking, really emphasizing the use of native plants so that we have better stormwater infiltration. Really trying to talk about the form of development as opposed to, we're getting away from segregating land uses, really trying to promote mixed use development throughout major corridors in the city. We also are going to be, we also have recommended that every residence in the city will be allowed to have an accessory dwelling unit as a matter of right. There are standards identified for that in the code as well. We are modernizing our sign regulations. There was a Supreme Court case about a decade ago that a lot of communities found that they needed to update their sign ordinance. We are one of them. We can no longer do regulations according to the content or the message of a sign. There's a lot of interest in incorporating dark sky provisions in our lighting ordinance, so that is something we have sought to do. And again, just bringing our ordinances in compliance with federal and state law. Do I still have a mic on? Oh, I do. Let's keep going. One of the things I wanted to touch on, we've had this question, why are there so many new zoning districts or more zoning districts? That's in part because state law now limits the ability of communities to regulate conditional use permits or to deny conditional use permit. We have a lot less discretion to do so. So if there are certain uses that we felt might be incompatible, we put them in a separate zoning classification, which we're not obligated to map. For example, extraction as a type of land use, or intensive storage, what is it called? Mini storage, that sort of thing. That's not the word I wanted. Intensive outdoor storage, that's the word I wanted. Intensive outdoor storage is a separate zoning classification. We are not proposing to rezone our planned development districts at this time. For the most part, each has a unique set of requirements and standards, which make it difficult to translate to new districts, but we have been working with interested developers to, as they move forward, to identify at least parts of their development, if not all of them, that can fit into one of our new zoning classifications. And so that experience with working with developers this summer has helped us make sure that our new ordinance is fine-tuned to what the market is bringing forward for development. So we've actually identified ways to improve our ordinance in the meantime. The way we went about this project, we had over the last 2 years an informal work group comprised of members of this body, one member from this body, one from the Zoning Board of Appeals, one from the Sustainability Committee. We then, over the course of the past half year or so, asked the Plan Commission to provide feedback on key policy issues. So that was through August. We released the full draft of the zoning code in August. We then had it formally reviewed, or the components that pertain to those committees anyway. Eight city committees and commissions reviewed the components pertaining to them in September. We scheduled 5 open houses that were attended by about 75 to 80 residents. We've had some additional plan commission guidance over the last month. We revised the zoning code and it was released a few weeks ago. We also have really made an effort to notify the public through an insert in utility bills, which hopefully most of you saw, our social media, our listserv messages, posters in the community, news articles, emails, etc. So we've really tried hard to get the word out. This has not been done behind closed doors. Here's an example of the flyer we used for open houses. At these meetings, which I facilitated and was joined by my colleagues at various times and several of our council members and plan commission members, and I want to thank you all for coming and to the public who participated. We had an opportunity to answer a lot of questions and hear a lot of comments, and that actually led to some additional changes to our zoning ordinance, as well as the zoning map. People who ask questions saying, why is this property zoned this way? Oh, well, that was an oversight. We will fix that. So that was what the open house did. The open houses did is really helped us get a good feel for how the proposed ordinance is being received and how we could make some improvements as we go through this process to the hearing today. Our game plan going forward, we have this hearing tonight. We fully anticipate the Plan Commission will give us guidance after the hearing for any additional revisions. There's a memo in the packet that's 9 or 10 pages long. It's one of my shorter memos. And it's a joke. And we anticipate bringing revisions back to the Plan Commission at their next meeting, November 28th. We're hoping that we'll be in a position to go to the council for the first reading of the ordinance, the rezoning ordinance and the sign ordinance and the zoning, sign and lighting ordinances go through what's called 2 readings. The first reading is at the first meeting, and then there's an opportunity to have generally the council, especially for something like this, I would imagine would want to continue with the normal practice and have 2 readings because something like this is of such significance that it needs to have as much airing as possible. So potentially the council could be adopting this on the 19th, and we will at the same time be updating our application forms and guides. If the council's able to approve it on the 19th, it would go into effect on December. If that happens, then it could be it would go into effect on December 29th, which would be in time for the new year. That's all I have as an update, as an overview, and I wanted to make sure I kept it short so that we'd hear from the public today.
I appreciate that, and
yeah, and I'm going to go to that next. Yep.
I was going to say thank you for letting me
Yep.
clarify which month. I don't want to have people thinking that's the 19th of November. So just clarifying and moving forward. Can you tell me on the statements that you were received to date?
Sure. And have you opened the hearing? I wasn't sure if you had
I
you
did.
Okay.
At 7:01, so we're just going
that's
over
right. You did
this.
say that. So we did receive a number of statements. These are summarized in the packet. I will just close I had them alphabetized on my screen here. Just a second. So we received statements from Sherry and Doug Caves, 2317 Middleton Beach Road, Bill Connors on behalf of Smart Growth Madison, Jamie Flanagan, 2157 Middleton Beach Road, Herb Garden, 7005 Cardinal Drive, Warren Giebert, 6305 South Avenue, Angela and Dan Gibson, 2151 Middleton Beach Road, Hans Hilbert on behalf of the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy, Mary and Dave Lawson, 2145 Middleton Beach Road, Patrick Lyons on behalf of Lycon Incorporated, Ken Markart, 7312 South Avenue, Kurt Paulson, a former Plan Commission member, Sean Pfaff on behalf of the Apartment Association of South Central Wisconsin, Michael Polnikowski, who is a Village of Cross Plains trustee and was interested in our lighting ordinance, Fritz Ragetz, pardon me if I'm spelling or saying the names wrong, 2609 Middleton Beach Road, Jill Dahl Santo Walker, 2405 Middleton Beach Road, Steve Schulfer Architects, Lon Sprecher, 2205 Middleton Beach Road, Towns of Middleton and Springfield, Terrence Wall, T-Wall Enterprises, and Jane Genke, 2161 Middleton Beach Road. And I had omitted that initially, but it's in the packet now. And then we also received statements after we published this packet this afternoon. We received statements from Tom and Bridget Keepers, 2165 Middleton Beach Road, and Jenny Corwin, President of Middleton Beach Road Neighbor Association.
Very good. Thank you for that update and the nice layout of their summarize thoughts. All right, moving on to inviting our public speakers. I'm going to go over a list which I will share back with you of the people who do not want to speak. I'm starting with the ones that support, and that's not in because I like anybody. It's just it's a shorter list. The do not support's a little longer list, so that's the only reason. So the support the item, but do not wish to speak. The agenda item is zoning hearing Kurt Paulson, and support the item but do not wish to speak is John Kemen, and the topic is number 3, planning. So the do not wish to speak and oppose is Steve Van Ness on the Allen Boulevard rezoning, Jane Wagenke on the new zoning ordinance, which I think she might have sent the email as well, or maybe I missed that. Okay,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
that one.
Ann Van Ness, proposed zoning on Allen. Terry and Dan Foss, the rezoning of R1 districts MBR. Craig Ostrom on zoning. Kathy Ostrom on zoning. Maura Harrington on the Allen Boulevard proposal, and Sharon Smith on zoning. All right. I'm going to hand these over so that I can keep the list separate and I don't intersect all of this. Thank you. So moving to our first speaker is George Benton. And when you come up, please make sure you state your name and address. I believe everyone did in the last meeting, and I do greatly appreciate that. So name and address, and on deck is David Lorman, so he can come up behind if he's present. Can you check?
George Benton. I live at 2167 Middleton Beach Road with my wife Susan. We are fortunate enough to live along Lake Mendota, but we also have a 10-foot easement for a storm drain coming through our yard, which belongs to the city of Middleton. So we have some experience with what happens when there are large rain events that with what washes out into Lake Mendota from where we live. We are very concerned about the development of 2159 Allen Boulevard. The initial proposal for a 7-story, 540 apartment complex that got withdrawn really worried us. The mixed-use avenue bothers because it's 60-foot buildings. As I understand how they can be arranged, 5 stories at 12 feet each. I would ask that everyone here and everyone on the council, please come to Middleton Beach Road, stand on it, and from the lakeside, look at what development's going to look like. Development's going to happen, but it doesn't have to be so dense that it changes everything in the neighborhood. This is going to be a problem. There's going to be traffic, and we have a full basement. If there are significant changes in how stormwater drains off, that worries us a great deal. We've advocated for studies before development. That's not going to happen apparently because it's the developer's problem to do all the studies. I just hope that the studies really take into account groundwater movement and storm drainage, because we have a really vested interest in that. I appreciate your attention and would advocate for a less densely developed site, since it doesn't look like we're going to get away without any development. Thank you.
Up next is David Lorman. And on deck is John Wigenke. So please state your name and address.
My name is David Lorman. My address is 3649 Marigold Circle, Middleton, Wisconsin. I've been a resident of the city since 2004. I serve on the Common Council representing District 7, the Airport Commission since 2020, Finance Committee, Conservancy Lands Committee, and Ethics Board since April of 2023. I'd like to comment on the item number 7 of your memo dated November 13th, which really is the ordinance 10.02.53, changes to the air district. As you consider changes, think about our 20-year airport master plan. Airports are more than just a place to store airplanes. Ours has 2 flight schools that account for about 2/3 of most flight activity. This activity includes in-air training, 30 hours of ground schooling, and access to full flight deck simulator. The airport also hosts 2 aircraft service and sales facilities, utilizing space for aircraft maintenance and accommodations and all related equipment. The airport employs a variety of staff from grounds and aircraft handling, aircraft maintenance technicians, aviation instructors, charter pilots, and front office staff. In the past 5 years, through scholarships, the community-based organization, Experimental Aircraft Association, has awarded 8 local high school students scholarships that cover primary flight training at a cost of about $10,000 each. A portion of these funds are raised by volunteers operating out of the city airport. The airport also hosts seasonal events that raise money for veterans. This year, over $30,000, childhood cancer, introduction to aviation, and a pancake breakfast. As you draft the zoning ordinances, turn to page 8 of the city strategic plan. And also turn to pages 29, 51, and 52 of the comprehensive plan. And ask yourself, is the zoning ordinance proposed by you support or contradict the city future state? I would ask city staff to require that the airport commission provide feedback to the draft zoning ordinance as well. We must be assured that any new ordinance does not jeopardize the city grant assurances or contradict federal or state laws governing airport operations. The airport is self-sustained through the enterprise fund, not the city general fund. It's generated through businesses, leases, and fuel sales. Ask yourself a couple of questions. Will the draft ordinance have a negative or positive effect on the future of the airport? And does this reflect the city's comprehensive plan? Thank you.
John Wigenke. And up next is Herb Garn.
Good evening, thank you. My name is John Wigenke. I live at 2161 Middleton Beach Road. I request the commission to remove 2159 Allen Boulevard from Amendment 2 and the comprehensive plan and the flu map and continue the current zoning as R1 or green space. This property is unique and deserves a PDD application and city review for any future planning. Please consider stormwater runoff, traffic, congestion. More importantly, please consider neighborhood input and the effect on the surrounding neighborhoods. This is important to a good neighbor city. Thank you.
Thank you. Herb Garn. And up next is Pat Freeber.
Hi, I'm Herb Garn at 7005 Cardinal Drive. I've provided these comments as a 30-year resident of Middleton and also as a professional hydrologist that's retired from USGS. I provided previous more detailed comments, so I'll keep this short. Numerous scientific studies throughout the country and locally have shown that the effects of urban development in a watershed cause rapid changes in the hydrologic system. These can include increases in surface runoff, peak flows and duration, decreased infiltration and groundwater recharge, channel erosion, and water quality changes. The onset of observable negative changes to the hydrologic system can occur at about an average of 10% of the impervious surface area of a watershed. And sometimes it's less, it ranges from about 5 to 15%. So my primary concern is impervious surface areas. USGS studies and monitoring in Pheasant Branch have shown that past stormwater practices have not been adequate to prevent increases in runoff and flooding, causing environmental problems and increased maintenance costs by the city. There is a limit as to how effective stormwater controls can be to prevent negative impacts to the downstream aquatic system. And that's a key statement that I would like you to remember. So one of the main goals of Middleton's comprehensive plan is to reduce runoff and prevent flooding and to maintain on-site water infiltration. Yet few actions appear in the revision to accomplish these goals. Research since the 1990s, so that this is not a new concept, has shown that the way to achieve these goals is to incorporate practices used in low impact development. And this approach, promoted by US EPA, is aimed at minimizing these kinds of impacts to the hydro system.
Your time is up. Thank you.
So some key ways to help improve the code. I agree with to decrease the maximum impervious area in zoning districts and to disconnect these impervious areas as much as possible.
Your time is up, sir. Your time is up. Thank you.
Okay, I'm about to.
Your time is up. Pat Faber up next. Thank you. On deck is Todd Kalish.
Pat Graver, 6206 Lakeview Boulevard. So I'm here to talk about the proposed zoning change for 2159 Allen Boulevard. I live on Lakeview Boulevard, and as I'm writing this, I'm looking out my window, enjoying my view of the lake, hence our street name Lakeview. I'm able to see the sunrise and the moonrise over the lake. Both beautiful, right? What will I be looking at if the new zoning is approved?
Could you get closer to the microphone, please?
A big brick wall. A lot of homeowners on Lakeview have lived there many years. I myself have lived there since 1988. The neighborhoods around 2159 Allen Boulevard are not 7 stories. They are 1 to 3 stories, with the majority looking like 1 or 2 stories when driving past on Allen Boulevard. I take it very personally when I read the Plan Commission meeting minutes, and 90% of their concern with respect to the surrounding neighborhood is wanting to help buffer and integrate the future development with the Middleton Beach neighborhood, going so far as to split the property east and west. East being established neighborhood and west is mixed use. The neighborhood to the east side of this property will not be looking at the development. Their 2-story garages, for the most part, will block their view to the west. It's also been disturbing to read and hear comments from the Plan Commission about how great the views will be for the apartment residents. Imagine how these comments offend the current tax-paying homeowners who you are proposing to take that view away from and replace it with a 7-story brick wall. These nameless, faceless people seem to be more of a priority to you than your current long-term tax-paying residents. What about us? Are you just going to say we don't matter? Major transit corridor is another phrase that comes up often. I don't believe that most people renting luxury apartments will be riding the bus. Also, if your target renters are Epic employees, like we've been hearing, they will not be taking Transat to Verona. Which brings me to traffic concerns. It's my understanding that the Plan Commission would prefer the entrance for a new development to align with Lakeview Boulevard with the possibility of stoplights. A development of the magnitude that a mixed-use avenue would bring to this property would bring at least 400 more cars to this neighborhood. Many of the west traveling cars will take a shortcut down Lakeview to get to University Avenue. That is at least 130 more cars on a residential street. If the proposed zoning goes through, I propose that Lakeview Boulevard be closed off from Yellen Boulevard like it was during construction. We had no problem with that. I'm hoping that you will listen to the people that have talked and take this feedback seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Todd Kalish. Up next is Sean Pfaff.
I'm Todd Kalish, 2225 Middleton Beach Road. Mayor Kuhn, members of the commission, thank you for taking public comment on this issue of zoning ordinance. So my comments revolve primarily around accessory dwelling units. I am in 100% support of the current language regarding accessory dwelling units in the revised zoning ordinance. This current process, as Mark summarized, has been extremely comprehensive and inclusive. When we first started talking about accessory dwelling units, we based the original proposal off of consultant expertise, staff expertise, public comment, experiences that other communities have had with accessory dwelling units. And then through numerous public comment opportunities, the proposal was changed and it was revised. Some comments were retained and changed the proposal. Some weren't taken, but the process worked in my mind. I think that the current proposal regarding accessory dwelling units will serve the city well currently and into the future to help address housing issues that we have in this city. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Sean Pfaff, and after that, Ed Brummel.
Good evening and thank you. My name is Sean Pfaff and I am representing the Apartment Association of South Central Wisconsin, 2909 Landmark Place of Madison. In a previous life, I was the mayor of Fitchburg for 2 terms. So Madam Mayor, thank you for what you do and thank you for members of this committee for taking time to be here. Middleton is a growing community, just like we've dealt with in Fitchburg, but we wanted to bring forward, and I want to applaud your staff, Mark Opitz and Abby and Daphne, for hearing our concerns. We went to open house in October and laid out some concerns relating to your housing density and some of the programs that you were trying to do to attract more and more density. And so the Apartment Association represents hundreds of apartment developers, owners, and managers in the city of Middleton and surrounding Dane County areas. In the partnered with the Middleton Police Department to present landlord, tenant trainings, and best management practices, regulations, and laws as requested to assist the city with housing and public safety efforts. And we look forward to presenting future trainings as requested if the police department so asks. So we wrote a letter, and I appreciate one of Mark's memos. In the first point, he addressed our issue in the first part of the memo. We had raised the issue about the LURA and some legal concerns that we were having based on including in the conditional use permit and making and incentivizing for developers to increase heights and issues like that as it relates to rent control. We talked to our team internally and got some legal guidance. We feared that that would be illegal in Wisconsin to have that happen. So if you'll see in Mr. Opitz's memo, the first number 1, he did mention how he's worked with us and reached out to us and vice versa. And staff has recommended cleaning that up to make it more truly a voluntary incentive. And also a key point, and applaud you and Mark and your team for making it consistent with the city of Madison. As you know, that's your neighbor to the east, and Fitchburg, our neighbor to the north, was Madison. So we always kind of want to have consistency across city boundaries. So we thank you for that. We know this is a difficult journey, a lot of issues to do with the zoning. Appreciate the outreach that was done. As I mentioned, we attended the open house on October 14th. Staff was great, listened to our concerns. We went back and sent the letter, and then your staff responded to it, and we appreciate that and wish you best of luck. And again, the Apartment Association of South Central Wisconsin wants to be a good partner with you, Madam Mayor, and your city and the police department. So thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Ed Brunel, and after him, Rick Lemon.
Also a member of the Apartment Association, thank you. Takes care of that. I kind of vented to my, I'm sorry, Ed Brunel, Lakeview Boulevard, I'm a property manager, small business owner in Middleton. We own and manage various properties around the city. And I've spoken before on various minor issues, more minor issues like parking and the like, but when I vented to myself, writing things out and stuff, what this really comes down to is the density and looking at how we're growing in the city. And if we're looking at maybe a increase in population.
I'm sorry, that was my phone. I'm
Okay.
sorry, my phone was going up. I
Okay,
apologize.
your phone.
Yeah.
You're good? Okay. So my main point is that there's going to be a quality of life trade-off here if we keep going the way we're going with the density, okay? I mean, I can talk about more salt going in your lake and less green space and, you know, the lighting issue, we got a new building above one of the properties we have, and there's lights shining down on our residents all the time. That's a quality of life issue. And yes, those people might say, fine, we're out of here, we leave. Us empty nesters might say, we're out of here, the taxes are too high because everything's more expensive. But what's that going to leave our city? It's not going to be Middleton anymore. Middleton's not going to be the same. If you're talking about that kind of an increase, we're talking, what, we have 22,000, 24,000 people now, and we're going to add another 10,000. I don't think we've done a really good job stating why we need this much more housing and what the trade-offs are going to be. Okay, so Lakeview Boulevard, I have issues with, okay, the engineer here wouldn't even answer the question last time we were here about the water table. He wouldn't answer, well, we're on the next block up in Lakeview, and before we put a community sump pump in, it's 4 inches below the ground surface, okay? What is it over there? He couldn't even answer that question. That's pretty simple, I thought. And then he said the DNR didn't even have to answer, he didn't have to answer them what would happen with the ground flow of water underneath. Is that gonna affect our houses? Maybe, maybe not. What about property values? Back to the trade-off thing, Middleton Beach Road. How about opening up the end of Middleton Beach Road so they can share some of the traffic problems we're gonna have, okay? Another one, just a fresh one, we're out walking Sunday and Beaver Crossing on Branch and Century there, the new apartments there. We're walking down and this young man, he's in his flip-flops and his bags and stuff. He's parking over a block away to walk to his apartments. Okay, that's already happening. We do not have the parking. I mean, I'm not opposed to apartments. Obviously, I own and manage them, but it doesn't make sense. It doesn't pass a smell test to be doing this kind of density. Get the funding first for your mass transit, and then maybe we can infill with people that are willing to do that. But we have to ask the citizens and be respectful of the citizens that have been paying taxes for all these years here. Why are we paying this forward? Why are we obligated to have another 40-some% population growth here? So yeah, we get upset about it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Rick Lemon, and on deck is Ginny Corwin. Yes, Ginny. I need to thank you.
Good evening, Plan Commission members and city administrators. My name is Rick Lemon, and my wife Tina and I have lived at 2519 Middleton Beach Road for over 43 years. We've raised our family on the street. I'm asking you to review 3 issues. Number 1, Middleton Beach Road should be zoned SRM, medium density. Although this is not exactly what we have now, it's close. It would approximate our current impervious lot coverage. Number two, I agree with the Water Resource Management Commission that the 2159 Allen Boulevard, 7 acres, is extremely sensitive. And this is a quote, extremely sensitive from a water resource perspective and should not be built on. How, end quote. However, since the city has chosen to ignore these recommendations, they should at least consider a compromise to split the 7-acre lot in half and make the eastern half zoned SRM or medium density so that it matches Middleton Beach Road. The western half should be zoned mixed use neighborhood and not mixed use avenue to fit in better with the surrounding neighborhoods. It would reduce the impervious coverage from 80 to 75%. Not a big change, but everything helps. In addition, by having half of that zoned as residential SRM, that would allow for a reasonable amount of green space in the middle and shelter some of the impact from the apartments. The western half, as a mixed-use neighborhood and not mixed-use avenue, would limit the maximum height to 3 or 4 stories instead of 5 or 6. Number 3, as an airport tenant, I must strongly object to the rezoning proposed for Middleton Municipal Airport Maury Field. These proposed changes have not even been discussed at the Airport Commission, and they should be discussed with them and approved there first. By circumventing this step, you endanger federal funding and deviate from the airport master plan, which took so long to work on and approve. I find it quite remarkable that the town of Middleton is able to strongly influence our plan commission when we residents of Middleton seem to have very little influence. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, Ginny Corwin, followed by Lon Sprecher.
Ginny Corwin. I live at 2319 Middleton Beach Road, and I'm speaking on behalf of the majority of our MBR residents. We understand that the flu map serves as a guide, whereas once the zoning map is approved and it's final, it cannot be changed. Currently, for 2159 Allen Boulevard, both maps show the designated categories and zoning the same. Approximately 25% of the east side of the site is designated established neighborhood to address the missing middle housing, and the remaining west side of the site is avenue mixed use. These two designations were approved by the Plan Commission on May 9th, 2023, but they never specified how the site should be divided. Planning staff and Daphne Zoo in particular said she mapped the width of the established neighborhood to approximate a typical established neighborhood lot. To date, the Plan Commission has not officially agreed on what the division between these two zoning categories should be. We're asking the Plan Commission to designate 50% of the site as established neighborhood and 50% as mixed use. If the goal is to provide missing middle housing, then increase the proportion of established neighborhood to accommodate more of that type of housing. This will also provide a better transition between the homes on Middleton Beach Road and the multifamily mixed use along Allen Boulevard. Additionally, it will help reduce traffic in and around the Allen site. We ask the Plan Commission to finalize the division of the Allen site before the new zoning map is finalized and approved. We know many Middleton Beach Road neighbors attended the recent rezoning open houses, and they were informative. However, because of the variety of questions asked at these sessions, not everyone heard the same things. If holding a meeting specifically for Middleton Beach Road residents would be helpful, we would be happy to work with you to schedule something. It's important that all MBR residents have an opportunity to ask questions specific to their unique properties and understand the rules about what is allowed and what is not allowed on them. Since any zoning changes can have a significant impact on a property development and value for years to come, it's important to get this right. We have been told that our properties will be grandfathered. But at minimum, we would appreciate having the city confirm the rules.
Will you stop with your phone?
Your time is up, and please mute your microphones online. Thank you, Jenny. Lon. And up next is James Kern.
Are we reset on the phone?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that.
So after having spent 10 years in city and state government, I acknowledge that rezoning is probably one of the toughest tasks facing a council or planners. So I applaud you for taking the step of approaching this. So having said that, though, there are several issues related to the new zoning.
I'm going to pause. Lon, you're at, can you give
Oh,
your
I'm sorry,
address?
2205 Middleton Beach Road. I was trying to beat the clock.
I'm restarting it.
2205
You're,
Middleton Beach.
thanks.
So anyway, tonight I want to just focus on the impact of proposed change for existing and new structures from single family SR1 to single family residential high density, so SRH. So it's clearly, in our view at least, a down zoning, and it will impact property values on Middleton Beach Road. On a square footage basis, some of the Middleton Beach lots qualify for the SRL low density. But the side setback is an issue for some of those as well. We recognize that. The vast majority of our lots clearly fit the SRM designation based on square footage. About 80% of the lots on Middleton Beach are 40 feet or slightly wider, and they're at least 7,000 square feet of land. They're wider than SRH 30 feet and slightly less than the SRM 50 feet, but closer to the 50 than to the 30. So the remaining 12 Middleton Beach lots range from about 9,500 down to a low of about 5,000. So this is why we think SRM clearly fits better the bulk of the MBR homes and makes the most sense. Now, the Middleton Beach lots are pretty unique in the city due to the legacy of sizing variations. So SRM1 would better balance the variations in lot sizes when converting to a new zoning designation. So to zone it the SFH high density category would put a number of lots over the 7,200 square foot maximum size. And then one other concern, if SRH becomes the standard on Middleton Beach Road, it'll also be applied to any new lots on Cycle Field. So lots that are 30 feet wide and 100 feet deep and 70% impervious on a 300,000 square foot tract would not be a good thing for Lake Mendota, stormwater management, or the property values. So bottom line, the ask is rezone Middleton Beach Road to medium density. So thank you for your understanding.
Thank you for that. Up next is James Kern.
Thanks very much, folks. I really appreciate you having this hearing and giving us a chance to talk about the neighborhood and the zoning plan, which is obviously carefully planned.
Can you give your address, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, 2213 Middleton Beach Road.
Thank you.
Yep. So I'm an environmentalist down to my socks, and you know, one of the reasons that moving to Middleton several years ago was so attractive is because it's such a green city. It places such a high value, I think, on green spaces. You know, Pheasant Ranch and many other areas are just absolutely spectacular. You know, this is the way that the city has shown that it values the preservation and connectivity of the green space, as mentioned in the comprehensive plan, which also mentions preserving the health of our lakes by having careful management of stormwater. So to do this really requires that we have careful stewardship of our current green space. And that's why I'm really opposing the current zoning plan for 2159 Allen Boulevard. You know, it's going to be developed, and I really agree with some of the other speakers that at least, you know, cutting it 50-50 and having 50% of it be zoned that in a way that's consistent with the rest of the street.
which would be SRM. I also opposed the proposal to rezone Middleton Beach Road to high density zoning as well. I didn't really understand that because it's a mature neighborhood, all the lots are there, the houses are built, and they're, they don't fit SRH at all. They're really very consistent with most of them SRL or SRM. So, it's a mature neighborhood, and I think that we should just have the zoning code reflect what's there. There's really not going to be a ton of redevelopment there. So thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you for that. At this time, I want to point out that we had an additional, does not wish to speak, Yvonne Gurn, and she opposes the changing zoning. Is there anybody on line that would like to speak?
If anyone on the Zoom wishes to speak, please use the raise your hand feature. Hans Hilbert has his hand raised.
Okay, just a moment, Hans. So this one was the do not wish to speak, and then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hans, for your patience. Go ahead and state your name and address.
Hi, Hans Hilbert, 3209 Cedar Trail in Middleton, and speaking on behalf of the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy. We did provide written comments. Our main comment is that we're appreciative that the new zoning code regulates impervious surfaces, but we feel that to meet the goal set in the comprehensive plan, that the limits need to be reduced. And we have a recommendation to reduce the limits throughout all of the districts by 50%, yet leave the remaining 50% that's reduced to be impervious if they're installed in a way that's disconnected from runoff and other stormwater features. And just want to make myself available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Was there anybody else?
Steve Schulper has his hand raised.
Steve, go ahead, please. And state your name and address.
Hi there, Steve Schulper, 6822 Frank Lloyd Wright Avenue. I would just like to express that the zoning corridor along North High Point Road, I received a message today regarding my desire for that to allow a residential use along that corridor. Mixed use would be appropriate. I just wanted to ensure that that my message wasn't implying that residential would be required. Rather, I think it should just be a allowed and permitted use along with the permitted commercial uses as well. That's all.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other hands up?
Does anyone else on the Zoom wish to speak? I think that's it.
Okay, thank you for that. And staff, thanks for the overview and helping me with everyone's comments. I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing. It is 7:58 p.m. Now, in moving to the agenda items, I'm going to recuse myself and leave the room. I have an indirect reason on item number 1. I will return for item number 2. And for Commissioner Erdman Hermans, she may want to put her video on as we will go to vote.
For purposes of quorum for the Plan Commission, Plan Commissioners are only counted toward quorum if their video is being shared. However, for the Plan Commission, we require 4 of 7 members present, and we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Abby. All right, so moving on to our first item of business after the public hearings, we have the specific implementation plan, Red Tail Ridge Phase 1, lots 5 through 40. Is it 5 through 49? Yes, and 51 through 58. Staff, would you like to give background?
Sure. It's quite likely, I can't see who's present on my screen, but is Chad or Wade available for this as well? Chad is here. Okay. So this is a request to have the specific implementation plan pertaining to the lots that Vice Chair Hanairo just mentioned. We previously have considered different aspects of phase one. In your packet is a zoning map pertaining to phase one, which we asked the applicant to provide. This indicates, I'll just go through this because I think it helps provide context. This indicates in purple is the planned development district specific implementation plan that potentially could become multifamily high density based on an agreement with the council, as long as it doesn't create a non-conforming situation. So that's not before you tonight. That was previously discussed. The PDD-G stands for Lot 3, which is not before you either. That's to be determined in the future. We don't have a specific plan at this point, or SIP for that project. The gold color, I guess it is to the north and to the south are lots 4 and 50. Those are condominium plats that you previously approved, and those need to retain their PDD-S zoning in the future because we don't have a zoning classification that addresses those. And then so before you tonight are the areas in brown and then in yellow at the bottom. The brown are townhomes that are generally as fourplexes on individual lots. They almost fit our multifamily low density classification, and I'm working with our consultant to see if we can tweak the multifamily density or the lot width standards and dimensional standards so that we can just, this is a good lesson for us to maybe we should revisit the standards for that classification. So I'll discuss that later. That's why that's shown as PDDS. And then to the south are 8 lots. 5 of them are smaller on the north side, and those fit our SRH classification with a change that we're recommending tonight. And then SRM is the medium to the south. So what's before you is the plan set that our engineering staff has reviewed, and we are recommending approval that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the SIP contingent on resolution of engineering staff recommendations and the applicant authorizing the placements of those lots that I just mentioned in those respective zoning classifications, contingent upon council adoption, new zoning ordinance and map. Chad, did you have anything to add? I didn't mean to do all the talking.
Nope, that's fine, Mark. Thank you.
Okay. So that's what's before you.
Thank you. Commissioners, would anybody like to make a motion, start discussion? And Mark or whoever's got the controls, if you want to show the agenda so we can see what your recommended motion would be.
Adams make a motion to recommend approval of the SIP pertaining to the lots contingent on resolution of engineering and staff recommendations and contingent on the applicant authorizing the placement of lots 51 through 55 in the SRH zoning district and lots 56 through 58 in the SRM zoning district upon council adoption of the new zoning ordinance and map.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Bruce seconds.
All right, thank you. Any discussion? I had a question about if you go to page, I think it's page 78 of the packet. I know there was an addition. There's just one street where Sandpiper Street is, or Spotted Sandpiper is misspelled. So
okay.
That's, I don't know how important that is, but I noticed it.
Well, it's spotted now, so that's good.
Spotted. Oh my God. I walked right into that one. Okay.
I went early with that.
Yeah. And then I had a question in my notes. Why is Red Start Street not part of this? Because if you look at the map, which I guess is before this page. Oh yeah, it's the one that's before the page with the misspelling. The pink line, the pink outline doesn't appear to include Red Start Street. I'm on page 77 of the original packet. Don't know where that. It's C101 in the bottom right.
Yeah. Here we go.
What was the question?
I'm just wondering why Red Start Street isn't part of this. It doesn't look like there's access to some of those cottages except on Red Start Street.
Well, the lots 44 through 49 have access off Red Start. Is that your point? Or, oh, you're asking why this is highlighted in purple? That the area highlighted in purple is not part of what's before you tonight,
Okay,
if that helps.
it does. Okay. And then last question I had, I know we had a previous SIP revision, I think, and Chad, the developer, wanted to add some language regarding conformance with the new zoning code. It was the kind of thing like as long as everything would be considered conform. Yeah,
It wouldn't create a non-conforming.
right.
That was for the multifamily site, the lots 1 and 2.
Right. And I'm just wondering, is there any need to build that language into this, or is that going to be taken care of in your conversations with the consultant about tweaking?
Well, and in my conversations with Chad and Wade, his designer, it's my understanding, Chad, that you're comfortable with the new zoning regulations, assuming they get adopted as we've discussed.
Yes, specifically with regard to lot 51 through 55.
Right.
And the other 3 lots to the south. I think that it's Andy Crooks that brought forth the SIP for the multifamily land. And I'm not necessarily a part of those discussions. So if that's what you're referring to, Alder Hernero, then I'm going to let Mark answer the question.
I mean, I think it's that's a reasonable. The issue, Chad, is that the other builder wanted assurance that they weren't going to be accepting a zoning classification that created any sort of non-conforming situation. So
okay.
I'm sure that you would feel the same way, and based on how the code is being drafted with the change we're considering tonight, that I'm not aware of any nonconformity that would exist. So I
would agree with I would totally agree with your statement. I just wasn't 100% up to speed on that part, but I totally agree with what you're saying.
So I guess Alder Hernero is asking whether that language needs to be added as one of the conditions. So, I think that's the question.
I don't have a problem with that. Can add that as a condition.
Do you have the wording?
I don't have the wording. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure that I see the need for it. It doesn't sound like Chad's concerned about it. You don't seem concerned with it. We're not actually talking about the apartment site tonight.
Right.
So.
Well, I know we're not talking about the apartment site. I'm just talking about the same issue of wanting to make sure. Yeah, exactly. But if it does, I agree. It does sound like the developer isn't concerned and the staff isn't concerned. So I'm not concerned as long as they're happy.
We've worked together with Mark, really. He's been very helpful on making our lots conform to the new zoning code. And keep in mind that this is a small part of Red Tail Ridge overall, and the remaining lots all do fall within the proposed code.
That's one reason why instead of when we started going down this path and they were going to propose a set of zoning regulations, I thought, wait a minute, let's not reinvent the wheel and let's see what we can do to tweak our code if necessary to make sure these work. So we're very close with that one adjustment to SRH tonight. Everything else will conform. And then it's just going to be so much easier going forward for not just city staff, but more importantly for the homeowners in the future. It just makes it so much easier for them to know what the rules are without having to consult documents that are hard to find.
Okay. All right. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to recommend council approval of the SIP pertaining to these lots, contingent on resolution of engineering staff recommendations and contingent on the applicant authorizing the placement of lots 51 through 55 in the SRH zoning district and lots 56 through 58 in the SRM zoning district upon council adoption of the new zoning ordinance and map signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. We'll move on to item 2, but first we need to retrieve Mayor Kuhn.
She's not spotted at the moment. But she's been notified.
She has been notified.
Yep. Oh, sure, Daphne.
Yes.
There's the mayor.
And Dale is here.
And Dale's here. Okay, good.
Right, thanks, everyone. So moving on to agenda item number 2, design review for lighting at 1915 Branch Street. Can we have some staff background, please?
Sure, yes. So this is the old Club Tavern, and so the new owner, Dale, is here and he can answer any questions, but he would like to add these lights to the Club Tavern, as you can see in these red squares at the top. Today he provided information that they're approximately 18 feet from the top. So from what was provided in the packet, you can see that it's probably going to follow close to this 20-foot, which at the furthest would be 0.2 foot candles, if you can see that. So staff, we really don't have too many issues with the light spillover, if there is any, specifically from the building to the front of along Branch Street, because that's about 15 feet from Branch Street. And so it has less than 1 foot candle, that could possibly spill over. So staff don't really see any issues. So we recommend approval, contingent that, he puts the lights as they are marked on this plan.
I've got a question for staff. I was just wondering, since we're lighting code now, how does this proposal, how does that fit into the existing lighting or the proposed lighting code in the terms of, would this be considered decorative lighting, or how would this be interpreted?
There really wasn't very much information with the lighting. That was something I was asking for more information last week. Daphne was unavailable last week. So I didn't go into detail, but they are fully cut off, as I understand, and that's what I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to answer the question right now, Randy. Sorry. Is the intent for a building, is it meant to be decorative, or is it meant to be security? I guess that's a question for Dale. Oh, both. Okay. So it's enough output to provide lighting of the grounds, basically, of the parking area.
There already is light.
Can you come to the microphone, please? And name and address. I see that you're using a crutch, so please take your time.
So 1915 Branch Street, Dale Beck.
Can you describe for the microphone for the people virtually what you were saying about what types of light it would be?
So I asked the electrician to come up with a light that's going to light the building, mainly wash the building. So the light that you had is what he came up with. So the goal is when the painting's done, that the building is going to light up. The top of the building is actually going to be white. So the wash will kind of look attractive to the streets and to the parking lot. And also it is a fairly dark area back there. So it would be nice, being the type of establishment that it is, it would be nice to have a little bit more lighting, coming down off of the building. Because you will have some wash because of the white paint. So you will have some wash, but it will be not I don't know if you're familiar with washing, but it will probably wash down into the parking lot a little bit. But there's significant distance between the lot line and the actual building, because the building kind of protrudes up out of the middle of the addition that was previously done in the
Okay, and I believe you said over there was both security and decorative, is that accurate? Okay. Thank you for that question, Commissioner Bruce.
Thank you. And one more follow-up, and this is only because we've got additional comments later in your summary of comments, Mark, from the person from the village across Plains talking about the lighting code issues, and he talks about the temperature of the light and trying to get away from the white lights, the 5,000 K lights. And I noticed that these lights are of that temperature rating. And was, if we were to go ahead and approve this, if we could approve this at a lighting temperature of 3,000 rather than 5,000. Just it's the color of little bit of the color of the light. It'll be a little less white or blue, more towards the warmer tones.
Okay, and I'm assuming this would match with our future night sky initiative since it's going down and.
Well, that's one of the.
Going up.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, okay.
So I've been looking through the lighting ordinances since Commissioner Bruce asked the question. We do have first of all, this isn't adopted yet.
Yep.
So
Yes.
Right.
I would say it complies with our current code. As my colleague here mentioned, the foot candle measurement at the lot line and having cutoff fixtures, those sorts of things are in compliance. The new code doesn't yet integrate any concept of temperature of the light. That was one of the bits of feedback we got for this meeting. What else was I going to say? So anyway, I don't have that language at this time.
Okay, all right.
I think what I'm trying to say is it's more of a preference. It's obviously not mandated yet, but we're just trying to make sure that we're not shining light straight into the skyline. So I appreciate it. It's knocked down, and the color suggestion is delightful.
It is, I guess, it would be a suggestion because I think at least moving forward, we might be going that direction. I guess we can't tell yet.
So just a suggestion. Yes.
Commissioner Hermans has her hand raised.
Oh, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Going off of what was just said, I see that this particular light comes in a model of the same wattage, 20 watt, 4,000 K. So slightly warmer, but they don't offer a 3,000 K. So to adopt that recommendation, they would need to redesign the lighting. So would you be amenable to adopting it with recommendation of model SG1 24K PCU 20 watt 4,000 K?
If you're asking me, Gretchen, yes, I would.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe email that to staff so they don't have to take that for notes. If you don't, that'd be great. Just keep that in mind. That's okay. Any other questions on that? And thank you for looking that up, Commissioner Erdman Hermans. It's greatly appreciated. Is there a motion?
I have a question for staff. You said you don't have issues? No issues?
Yeah, based off of our current lighting ordinance, it complies fully with what we have right now. Yeah, so we don't have any issues.
Commissioner Bruce will make a motion to approve. Subject to the suggestion of changing the light fixture to allow for a 4,000 K lighting temperature.
Is there a second?
Erdman Herman, second.
Okay, great. Any comments or suggestions? Hearing none.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Maybe it's a comment. So the language subject to, that's your intention is your intention to suggest that that's the direction?
My suggestion is to make that a requirement of this, if I can do that.
That's what I'm wondering. Yeah. Is that something we can require?
I hesitate to do that.
I'm a little hesitant of that too. I think you have design review authority, but as long as something complies, I mean, it's a little bit of a nebulous area. I mean, I guess.
Well, I was just thinking, we did not receive a photometric plan as
Right.
part of this submittal. So maybe the option would be to require either the 4,000 K option that Commissioner Bruce and Commissioner Urban Hermans recommended, or they could bring back a photometric plan showing that they are fully in compliance without any spillover at the lot line.
It sounds like a good.
It sounds,
Order the better fixtures at that point.
it sounds like the latter is cleaner. So Abby, can you repeat that?
Typically for lighting on commercial buildings, we would require a photometric plan that shows the foot candles on the ground and proves that there's no spillover on the property lines. Based on Daphne's review, we are pretty confident that there would not be spillover at the lot lines, just based on the specifications of the fixture. What I was proposing is that the commission could give the applicant the option to either use the 4,000 K fixture, which would be recommended because it has a warmer light level and would be more in compliance with the new lighting code, or they could bring back a photometric plan if they want to stick with what they have proposed here, but the photometric plan would help to ensure that it meets the current code requirements.
And I think that would amend his motion as per that. Are you accepting of that?
I'm accepting it as a friendly amendment, yes.
Excellent. And Commissioner Erdman Hermans, do you also accept that?
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments or suggestions, questions?
I would just like the motion restated. So is the motion to approve? Go ahead.
What I recorded is to approve the lighting plan contingent on use of the model that was cited that we'll get tomorrow.
It's
So
on the
contingent on the
screen.
use
It's on
of
the
that
screen.
model.
Oh,
I'm
thank you.
sorry.
SG1-20-4K-PCU.
Okay. Or to provide the city with the photometric plan indicating that the applicant would be that the light fixtures would be in compliance.
Okay, so that's the motion.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, Resolution 2023-53, Plan Commission Resolution to amend the comprehensive plan for the city of Middleton. I'm asking for some staff background on the updates.
Yes, so the Plan Commission recommended approval of the amendment to the comprehensive plan. The Common Council also recommended approval on first reading. They had a change to 4 parcels of commercial land in the Stonefield area at the corner of Stonefield and Gammon Road. They are proposing to change those to neighborhood mixed use. This adoption of the comprehensive plan requires 2 readings of the ordinance, and the second reading must be approved with this resolution number being brought forward from the Plan Commission inserted into the ordinance. So our staff is recommending approval of resolution 2023-53.
This is Hanira. I move approval of resolution 2023-53.
Is there a second?
Adams will second.
Any comments, questions?
I just want to make the comment that the Plan Commission actually had made the change that Commissioner Bruce had suggested for the Stonefield, and I don't know why it didn't make it into the version that the council saw, but that was, the change is now consistent with your request.
How does, I'm just a little unfamiliar as to how this action kind of codifies the comprehensive plan. How do the comments this evening regarding the split in the Allen Boulevard site, the 2959 Allen Boulevard site to 50-50, more of a 50-50 split, how is that impacted by this action?
That's a good question. We've discussed this quite a bit at a staff level and working a bit with our city attorney as well. The comprehensive plan is a planning document and it is not regulatory. So where exactly that line appears on the Allen Boulevard property from the comp plan standpoint, it could, shift 50 feet here and there and it would not matter. When it is brought forward through the zoning map, we have to have a legal description if the plan commission and the council wish for us to split zone the parcel. So I have spoken with our engineering staff and they are able to develop that legal description in-house. Once the plan commission discusses that through your zoning discussion, either later this evening or at your next meeting, whichever you'd prefer. We did go back and measure the portion that's the established neighborhood, and those lots are being shown as about 150 feet deep currently.
Okay, and if we were to take the position in the zoning map that it was a 50-50 split was appropriate, would that be allowed given this?
Yes,
Okay.
that can shift because the individual zoning decisions do not have to be consistent with the comprehensive plan, though it is best practice that they are. But I think that where that line is shown, it shows that there's an intent to have two different classifications. And I think that through zoning, we need to decide exactly where that line is, but we do not need to do that as part of the comprehensive plan.
And to follow up on that, if the line changes for the zoning, then a future amendment to the comp plan would change the flu map to match.
We could clean that up through a future amendment, but I don't think we would necessarily be under any rush or obligation to do
Right.
that immediately.
Yep.
Yes.
That was helpful. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving resolution 2023-53, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to guidance regarding completion of zoning, sign, and outdoor lighting ordinances and zoning map. So I'm going to look to staff. I'm going to ask if, as you go over this, if we can also see the map at the end, in case people are referring to a specific site, we can see it. Okay, please, staff, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Kuhn. The memo in your packet was revised yesterday to address additional comments and issues that have been raised. The first couple items in the memo, though, are the same as they were on Friday. The first issue is building height and density bonuses. And rather than going through and reading all this, I just wanted to remind you of the way we've done this previously. I'll give you some background here with text and then basically pose the policy question for the commission in red text at the end. So I guess I would just turn it over to you to see. I will simply add to on top of the memo that we have that we are currently working with internally here with our attorneys and amongst ourselves to determine how best to respond to the comments we receive, but we welcome any further direction or input that you have, recognizing that there's a legal aspect to this.
Understood.
So are we going to walk through items 1 through?
Well, that's why I didn't want to belabor anything. I just wanted to leave it to you what you want to focus on, but I thought it'd be useful just to take them in order. If there's nothing to add to one, we can just move on.
Go ahead, Commissioner Bruce.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it would be helpful for me personally if we just kind of looked at them. I've read through them all, but if we could if you could quickly just get to your questions related to those items, maybe summarize that question, and we could have any discussion relative to those. Do others feel?
Yeah, I like that idea. And as you're walking us through the building height density bonuses, I'm interested in knowing whether the comments brought by the apartment association affects the net zero building option, or if it's just the issue of the LURA. And I also have I'm just having a block. I cannot make sense of the phrase that is showing just before 2. In other words, those districts where only one additional story is allowed for a height exception would still apply, whether a developer wishes to, I don't get that.
So we have some questions as well. So what we're proposing is that the additional height is offered as a voluntary contractual LURA that would not be linked to the conditional use process. But I think your question, Owner Nairo, is how do we still use the conditional use process to limit height overall?
Would we still? We still would.
Yeah, and I don't have a good answer for you right now, but that would be our intent.
Okay.
Is to not.
So in other words, we don't want, if the zoning classification limits an additional story to 1 story, we'd want that to remain the law, if you will, rather than if we decouple this from the conditional use process, we still would want to say that you can only have the 1 story instead of 2. If I didn't say that very well, but like mixed use neighborhood, for example, only allows 1 story by conditional use, but there are other zoning districts that allow 2 stories. So we still would want those limits to be enforced, but it might not be through a conditional use process. It would be through the approach that Madison's using. So we need to, we're still working on this language. I'm actually not as familiar with this as Abby is.
I think that the concern that was raised by Mr. Pfaff is related only to the LURA because municipalities are prohibited from implementing inclusionary zoning. The reason that we were proposing to go with the Madison approach for both the LURA and the net zero is because we did not want to enter into a situation where somebody would be able to take advantage of 2 additional stories, especially in the MUN district and the MUA district. So MUU, I think you are able to gain both stories if you do both practices. So that's why we're proposing to go the same route with both, or otherwise we don't see a way to write the code that they could get the CUP for one and the voluntary agreement for the other.
Okay. So if they do one or the other in a zone district where 2 additional floors would be allowed, like they only have to design the net zero building to get those 2, or make it affordable housing, comply with our affordable housing.
For MUU, they have to do both to get both.
That's
right?
No.
Oh, they have to do one or the other to get both.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
It's so you can get 1 story or 2 stories.
Yep.
Using one or the other or both.
And I think that was our intent when we talked about, would we require both to get the 2? Okay. So are you saying that we're not ready to act on this because we need to see the changed language?
We wanted to get any feedback you had as you react to the comments you've received during the public hearing, recognizing that staff still has some work to do with our attorneys to revise the language. So we don't have language specifically available right now.
It makes, just from my point of view, it makes sense to take this step to make this a voluntary agreement rather than as part of the conditional use process. I think that does make sense. And the one comment that I have regarding the net zero design, and I saw it in another comment from the public from Smart Growth Madison, having to do with the standard that we're choosing to make it something that is a design related item rather than something that you have to test for post occupancy. And I don't know the net zero standards well enough myself to know whether that's the case.
Right. And that makes sense to us as well.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to do it other than to just go by design. And I think that's how we,
I believe in the ordinance, we've written it to be designed as net zero.
Okay.
Because yeah, as you said, there's no way to actually enforce that or, you know,
Okay.
take down a story if they
Yeah,
don't actually hit,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. I had a question related to the height bonus and, okay, it's 244 in my notes, which I think is 261 in the new packet. And we talked about this, a thought on plan commission, but I didn't see the change in there. So the requirement is that the cumulative interior square footage of the affordable unit shall be greater than or equal to 50% of the total interior square footage of all units and common amenity space, such as community rooms and fitness rooms, above the maximum number of stories or height in the base zoning district. So this means if they get an extra floor, they need to devote 50% of that additional space to affordable housing somewhere in the building, correct?
it would be somewhere in the building.
Somewhere in the building.
Yeah.
But we talked about specifying, especially if you think about step backs, we would want the additional housing area to be equal to the greatest area, the floor with the greatest area, not the one at the top that might have the, less area. Does anybody else remember this
I
conversation?
do remember that conversation. I don't remember if we had a plan commission or if we had it at the
Workforce
housing.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but we did have that discussion that the intent was not to, if the upper floor was smaller than the lower floors, not to be 50% of the smaller floor, but 50% of the larger floor.
Yeah, I mean, because think of a situation where somebody gets that extra floor so they can put like a penthouse apartment, but it's only going to be like a third of the, area of the rest of the building. We would want more affordable housing than 50% of that.
So we could say 50% of the lowest floor
The
with
base
housing.
floors.
Of the first floor.
I wouldn't say first floor because we might have mixed use.
Why not say the maximum square footage floor?
I like that.
There you go. Yep.
Of the floor with the maximum housing square footage or
Residential.
maximum,
Square footage.
the maximum square footage devoted to housing. We'll figure it out. Okay.
So say first floor. Because it's just the cumulative total interior square footage.
Well, we understand the intent. It makes a lot of sense, and I think we're all on the same page. So we'll come up with the best language.
So we're done with number one.
Looks like it.
Okay. Number two is the potential reduction of maximum impervious surface ratios. This is something that you heard Herb Garn, Hans Hilbert, and others speak to. The quick reaction from staff and our project consultant, Vanderwell, is listed here in my memo. It would have a significant impact the ability to accomplish city goals of the comp plan. That's actually language from Ben, our consultant. I do want to add at this time that we of course could, we fully expect that even though we've done the best we can to create an ordinance that works for us out of the gate, there may need to be some tweaking and adjusting in a period of time. But obviously, if this is a pretty significant component of it, so we want to get this right and make sure it reflects the will of the Plan Commission and the city's comprehensive plan. So if you are concerned about the testimony you've heard, I guess we would need specific guidance for how you'd like us to change the zoning classifications. And the only other thing I would add is that keep in mind that the lot coverage standard that we've used in the past allowed 35% coverage, but it didn't include driveways and certain surfaces. So like, certain flat surfaces like driveways and walkways and leading to the front. So the analysis from Vanderwall was that we were oftentimes allowing impervious surface ratios that were in the 60 to 80% range already. And so that's what our new code was based on. But I mean, that's the basis.
Yeah, my recollection, in the design practice was that we would end up with projects we felt had quite a bit of green space if it was 1/3 pervious. So 67%, 33%. That felt like it was very green, open. And so I would think that would. I think we could go. Certainly, I'm comfortable with ratios greater than that. 70% or
Of impervious surface?
Of impervious surface, okay. Yeah. I personally am. And I think the 50% reduction is very dramatic, and I understand why they're suggesting it. But the only thing I could support a moderate or minor reduction, but there'd have to be some additional study or some additional reasons why we were doing that, from my perspective.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for letting me clarify your statement. Is there any other comments, Alder Hanara?
Well, I have a question and a clarification. So the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy, the suggestion to reduce the impervious surface limit in each district by 50% was not to just slash it and leave it that way, but rather cut it by 50%, but allow development to proceed up to the full 100% that we have right now, whatever the district is, only if the impervious surfaces are disconnected in some way, which is one of the recommendations that Herb Garn had for low impact development months ago. So that's my clarification, because there's a big difference, right?
I did not understand it that way.
Yeah, there's a bonus. They call it a bonus, but you can get the other half if you disconnect, because that's what they're trying to steer people towards. So my question, and I don't know if Ben is available to answer it, but the comment that 50% reduction would significantly impact the ability to accomplish other city goals. Was his understanding that it was an actual 50% cut and no chance to get the full? And regardless, what specifically wouldn't we be able to accomplish?
Was it his understanding? I had provided him and he had access to all the comments, the statements we had received. So he was presumably familiar with those. The email I got from him with the 50% reduction, I think I got that on, actually this must've been by Friday, because I had this in the packet Friday. So I could share the email with you. I don't have it on the screen. I don't think he specifically cited others. He spoke in general terms, more general terms than specific.
Did that answer your questions?
Maybe not satisfactorily.
It did. It makes me more inclined to look at what Friends of Pheasant Branch and Herb Garn are suggesting we do.
Yeah, I'm looking for Ben's email in the meantime, so I can give you a better answer.
Okay, thank you for that.
And I would, if we go that direction where we're talking about that I feel is a pretty significant change in the zoning code, and I'm not necessarily against it, but I'd like to have other engineering review of that to just confirm that there aren't impacts that we don't understand yet, and including maybe some of our private consultants that work with the city quite a bit, just have them weigh in before we adopt that.
I think that's a very good insight. Thank you for sharing that.
So, Mayor,
yes.
So I have his email and I've sent it to all of you, Planning Commission members, obviously a public document. He said there are lots of other city goals in the comp plan that talk about infill and redevelopment, increasing density, improving multimodal transportation, providing more diverse housing options, et cetera. There are also goals that mention stormwater management, impervious surface, et cetera. We have attempted to strike a balance between these competing goals in the new code, but a 50% reduction would significantly impact the ability to accomplish other city goals, et cetera. There's a few other bullet points here as well. I won't read them all, but I did forward that to you, Alder Nairo and others, so you have that.
Well, I like the idea of coming back to this at our next meeting and maybe exploring it further. And I will say that looking, I appreciate Commissioner Bruce's comments about the, 1/3 or 30% around there is a lot of open space or green space, and that's good. But I would say if we're mostly in the 60 to 80% range of impervious surfaces on our existing built environment, maybe our goal should be to get lower than that. And so maybe a 50% reduction would be too much, but maybe we can think of a different number to take down our impervious surface limits.
Well, again, to reduce our impervious surface ratios and just straight away reduce them and not as a method of disconnecting. But to reduce it will impact the densities that we're able to achieve and the amount of infill that we'll be able to achieve. So it is a competing issue, one of balancing our objectives. And I'm not sure, I'm not sure honestly which way is, what's more important to me right now. My gut reaction is I think I'd rather see more infill development and less sprawl than the other way around.
And I would add that we have other ordinances like the stormwater ordinance that play an instrumental role in regulating stormwater management. And maybe there's improvements to that ordinance that can be made as well. I would add that Chad from Encore Construction also commented to me that they actually were going to strive for somewhat reduced impervious surface areas compared to what our standard allowed, but that was based on their stormwater management plan that they have. That doesn't mean that you can't have a site with higher density that doesn't have have stormwater management elsewhere in the property. So sometimes, whether you have on-site stormwater management or whether a development makes arrangements to have a different approach, I can't speak to that because I'm not the stormwater engineer. But to right now, the way it's written gives us more flexibility for the density that Commissioner Bruce mentioned. But we obviously have stormwater management or stormwater ordinance that is quite robust, as I understand, and I think it's going to also be improved, and that can address that concern. So if you want us to do some more research, happy to do that. Look into what disconnected practices would entail. We're here to listen to what you want us to do.
Alder Hanero, would it be if we were to leave the impervious surface ratios they stand in the zoning code now, would you be amenable to that, to looking at the stormwater management ordinances to provide that disconnection in that?
I would. I also wonder, though, staff asked the question, are there other specific low impact development measures that the Plan Commission would like to incorporate into the ordinance? I'm wondering how, I would love your guidance as to how we could incorporate disconnecting impervious surfaces into the ordinance. What would that look like? So that we're doing it in zoning, but also can do it through the changes to the stormwater ordinance. Because that is the one that keeps coming up, and I think it's worth looking at how could we incorporate them. It's interesting that the WRMC did not recommend the height bonus for going above and beyond stormwater management requirements, because this could be one of those options. But so staff, is that possible for our next meeting to have a have Ben look at other ordinances maybe that do that.
And thank you for talking through that. All great insights. I appreciate it. Are we moving on to the next item?
Mixed-use building definition revisions. We had received input from a couple of local developers and guidance from our project consultant. And based on that, I had suggested some language change on page 3. Scroll down, please, Daphne. As on the screen there, shown in red. I guess I would be hesitant to diminish a mixed use component of a ground floor to 5 or 10%. That just seems to me to become an afterthought. 33% I think is already pretty minimal for a corner property. If it's on a corner.
Where did the 5 or 10%, was that a suggestion? I must have missed that.
I don't think well, it was in one of the
comments.
emails
I did not see
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Well,
and the reason for it was tied to financing. The claim was that that's what was
it is.
financed.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
If the 33% is there the ability to get the 33% reduced through administrative or plan commission action?
So there is language. I don't know. The answer to that I believe is no. There is language that in the parking section that allows reductions for parking, but not for something like this. That would be something that's baked into the ordinance.
And this 33% only really applies to buildings on corners. Is that correct? So if it's just a single street face that's fronting on, the 33% requirement does not apply. Is that correct?
Actually, that's a very good question. The intent on this was we were thinking specifically of buildings that are at street corners, but the way this is drafted now, the way I put this, it would define a mixed use. It would apply to all mixed use buildings, no matter where they're located, including the ones on corners and mixed use avenue.
The reason I was asking about it is because I thought the original intent was that we were going to push for mixed use on corner locations, on main street faces. If we were to ask for commercial uses up and down all of these corridors, we're going to flood the market with space that just won't be possible to fill. So to me, it seems like the 33% is valid for corner spots, and that if it's not on a corner, that we shouldn't require the mixed use. It obviously can be put in there at whatever point they want, but that the minimum would drop away.
And that leads to one of the other comments we got from one of your former colleagues, Commissioner Paulson. The mixed use urban district, the suggestion could be that we could have standalone apartment buildings, for example, in those districts and not require a mixed use building. And that would be another way to handle it. But what you're saying, Commissioner Bruce, is to specify that the 33% is especially important for for mixed use buildings that are at corners.
That was kind of what I thought the intent was. And I looked at the other commissioners.
And so I would say not especially important for those, but only important for those. That was my understanding too. And looking at the wording, what is the total buildings ground level, gross floor area? Why is it total buildings? Should it be the building's total ground level gross floor area?
Shall consist of the minimum total of 33% of the total building's ground level. You're questioning what that means?
I'm questioning what total building possessive. Total buildings ground level.
She's asking if it should be buildings total instead of total buildings.
Oh, I see.
Like the
Oh, I
language,
see.
yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if I transposed something that a consultant gave us. That might have been the drafting error. I agree with the way you're phrasing it.
How would that apply, just going back to our previous discussion, how does that apply to corner versus a non-corner?
Well, I think what I need to do is work with Ben to have a sentence just to clarify that this pertains to a corner property. Or maybe have a separate standard. That's probably what we would do for mixed use in the mixed use avenue. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
But if that's
Okay.
the intent,
Okay.
I misunderstood previous discussion if that was your intent. But I mean, at least I understand that's the intent now. So I don't want this to get too complicated, obviously. So your intent is that a mixed use building that the default definition not link it to a 33% ground level measurement unless it's at a corner, in which case then that 33% is important, minimum of 33%.
Right, because that's the only mixed use that would be a corner property or a corner lot would be the only one required to have mixed use.
Yeah.
Others could, but they wouldn't be required. I also wonder, Mark, if you can check on the second sentence in that paragraph, the non-residential use floor area shall be calculated based on the ground floor area of all buildings within the lot.
So the reason why that got added is because the Castle Rock project. I don't need to go into detail on that, but we had an applicant that is considering some changes to a previous approval, and they're talking about in that case having underground parking straddling two buildings. And so I was trying to avoid a loophole. So that's where we were trying to come up with some other language, but I will work with Ben. So what are you, Lisa, you're asking?
I'm just trying to think, I can't quickly do the calculations in my head, but I'm trying to think of a situation where you might have multiple buildings where if you add up the ground floor area of all those buildings and calculate 33% of that and say that's got to be the non-residential component for the one building that's on the corner, you might run into a math problem, I guess.
Here's what I'd like to do. I will send you Ben gave us two options for this, and I specifically would like your input on that, if you don't mind. I didn't want to get too buried into the weeds, but I'm happy to work it with Commissioner Hanero on that.
I have a question about the corner. So is it, if there's multiple buildings on a lot that's a corner lot, that is the total? Or is it if there's a corner lot that has multiple buildings, it's just the building on the corner of the lot?
Right.
Good clarifying question, yes.
Right, and that's, the intent was to have the building on the corner have the commercial component. But when the project straddles two buildings, how is that calculated? That's what we're wrestling with. So the intent is to specifically have, let's say, a coffee shop located at a corner where people can walk from other streets. That's the intent. So we'll do a little more work on this. Alder Hanero, if that's okay with you. I will. Anybody else? We can come up with some language for the next meeting.
Okay.
And thank you, Commissioner Erdman Hermans, for clarifying.
Yeah.
Okay, so what topic? We're on the regulations. Thank you.
So Commissioner Paulson has recommended some enhancements to the mixed use language, and my colleagues and I discussed this today, and we support in the first bullet point, we support the concept of adding the mixed use avenue language to the mixed use neighborhood language, recognizing that we have
mixed-use neighborhood allows single and two-family residences as permitted uses without any locational restrictions. So when there is a building that has 3 or more residences in it, then that's where the mixed-use component would come into play at a corner. Is that, Abby, am I summarizing that right?
Right, so basically what we did was we added, you know, the townhouses, multiplexes, and apartments, if they are at the corner of an MUN district, those would be required to be mixed use. However, if it's a single family or a 2-family home in a mixed use neighborhood, those can remain single family and 2-family as it is written, drafted right now in our ordinances based off of Professor Paulson's recommendations.
How are we defining these well-traveled corridors? How do we know when it applies, I guess is the question.
So it would be in any, you know, mixed use neighborhood. So right now in our zoning map, I can pull it up, but it's like the Parmenter from, I forget, Lee to.
Essentially from downtown to the roundabout, essentially, or from University to the roundabout, roughly.
Along Parmenter.
And the other way to handle this would be not to allow single family or 2-family at corners. I mean, that would be the variation, of course. But one of the concerns I pointed out when we discussed this today is, there might be a desire to expand mixed use neighborhood into other streets in the future that aren't necessarily on corridors, and so that's the counter to this is if we want the flexibility to have mixed use neighborhood zoning start extending away from corridors, we probably shouldn't have such an onerous requirement that every corner has to have mixed use, if that makes sense.
I agree. Yeah.
That's why we had a spirited discussion about this today. And so I wasn't quite sure. I had to leave for an appointment, so I wasn't quite sure how it resolved, other than that the mixed use avenue language would apply for multifamily buildings, but not for the single family and 2-family.
Yeah.
So
that would make sense. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Erdman Hermans, can you repeat what you said?
Well, I really support the concept of mixed use neighborhood, kind of infilling into previously developed areas. And I think that the language is a bit sticky with calling well-traveled corridors, because well-traveled corridor might change over time. And who's defining that? And I agree that that could be a quite onerous requirement that every corner would have a mixed use in a building or be non-residential. I guess I would support language that made it easier to create more mixed use in the future. So while I support the idea of, requiring mixed use in the already mapped areas, similar to MUA, I think writing it into the code for MUN might cause more problems in the future for the type of development that we want. So I guess I'm interested in maybe thinking about this more cautiously.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Commissioner Bruce, please.
I think the mixed use neighborhood, as the parcels are currently laid out, I'm not sure that there are corners now that are not commercial uses now, correct? And I think allowing that to be more organic and as it moves forward is better, and not making it a requirement would be better in that case. It's a little different than the mixed use avenue. We're really trying to promote densities and promote mixed uses, kind of seeding some mixed use along those corridors.
Thank you. Any other comments on that?
I was just gonna note, there are 2 single-family homes that are mapped as MUN that are on corners. And so our concern was if we have that language in there that we're requiring the mixed use, those homes would, without going through a variance process, they wouldn't really be able to put on an addition or anything because they would be legally non-conforming land uses at that point.
That's a struggle. So thank you for sharing that. Alder Hanira?
I just have a process question. So we're going through the staff memo right now, and this is one of former Commissioner Paulson's comments. I, at some point, would like to address several other comments that were included in his letter, and I don't know if it's not directly related to this topic, so should I wait?
Maybe it would be helpful to get through the rest of this. So for the first bullet, is the takeaway that you do support or don't support adding apartments, multiplexes, townhouses as permitted uses is one of the questions, I think, although maybe I didn't flag that specifically. Yeah, well, I didn't necessarily say that. And then if they are at corners, do you want them to require those uses to be mixed uses? I guess that's the question we have for that first bullet. So
I guess, may I ask, since Mr. Paulson is here,
thank you. Get Kurt.
would you care to weigh in on this and help us understand better what your specific recommendation is? Thank you.
If you're going to wear a red shirt and sit in the audience.
Please state your name and address.
Kurt Paulson, 6921 Ramsey Road.
Thank you.
And Mr. Former Mayor Dan Ramsey. We're waiting for Coon Road. So currently under mixed use neighborhood, these residential buildings, residential only buildings, are not a permitted use, they're a conditional use. But they're permitted as a permitted use in the mixed use avenue when they're mid-block. Let me say that a different way. So if we're talking about mid-block buildings, non-corner buildings, mixed use avenue allows residential only buildings by right. But mixed use neighborhood requires those to go through a conditional use permit process, which seems to thwart the idea of a mixture of uses because it's still subject to the height limit. So small scale multifamily, townhouses and the like that are mid-block would seem to be what we want in a mixed use neighborhood. So all I suggested is that they become permitted uses rather than conditional.
Yeah.
And if you still want, you could attach the requirement that a residential building on a corner have to be a mixed use building to have that bottom floor of commercial.
Well, I'm glad that you clarified that because that makes sense to me. I think having it be permitted use and MUN makes sense. And I think we've had the discussion regarding the corner uses now, and I still feel that requiring commercial is not appropriate in the MUN, although it is in the MUA.
Well, and the related issue is that these are not a permitted principal use of a mid-block building in a mixed-use urban district, which is a different related question.
That's another item.
Right, so we come up with this in Madison too, which is in a mixed-use district, do you want residential only buildings mid-block? I think we do, because you're still mixing the uses in the neighborhood. And that solves your question about filling the market with first floor vacant commercial like in Madison.
I will comment that I appreciate that because a lot of times when I'm driving around, I feel like it's 4-story, 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 and it's almost like a cavern. So having different density and heights makes it feel more like a community and that it's not just rows of buildings. So I appreciate that.
And the mixed use neighborhood designation will cap residential only building at 3 stories because it's 36.
Much appreciated.
Thank you. So staff, does that provide enough guidance?
So the consensus, what I'm hearing is that you would like us to move the ones in mixed use neighborhood that are B, C, and D under conditional use. You want those to become permitted uses.
Yes.
Hearing that as consensus.
Mm-hmm.
but then not require the same as MUA, where we would require them to be mixed use on corners and we would just leave it. So it could be on corners, it could be mid-block.
In the MUN,
Right.
it would be allowed, but not required. We didn't talk about the mixed use urban and.
We're getting to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Don't require corner mixed use. Okay. So then the next one is, the second bullet is the mixed use urban. Should townhouses, multiplexes, apartments, not part of a mixed use building be allowed in the mixed use urban district? And we have absolutely no problem with that. Planning staff support that change.
Yep.
Is there agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay, that's easy. Then the last one is townhouse and multiplexes are not currently allowed unless part of a mixed use building in the mixed use downtown district. Should they join apartments as being allowed as standalone land uses? I think that paraphrases Professor Commissioner Paulson.
What would be the argument against doing that? Like,
Well,
why
I just think the
isn't it
market's
already?
not gonna, I guess that we're not opposed to that, but I think the market would probably never, it probably would never happen, but if you don't have an objection to it, that's fine.
I don't have any
I don't
objection to it.
object.
I would agree with you. I don't think that that's gonna happen, but who knows?
But let's not create a barrier
Yeah.
for it to not happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
Good clarifying point. Thank you so much.
okay. That should take care, and then you said there were other issues you want to raise, Alderman Iro, from that.
I'm okay going through the memo and then picking up the comments that we have on comments received.
We may want to pause, and I do realize there are a few people in the audience who are here on, to best of my knowledge, at least one specific road.
Okay.
We might want to talk about that so we can release.
Okay, that, yeah,
Folks.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and could be paused, I guess, based on that thought. So are you interested in going to the zoning map?
I would at least
It-
like to talk about the MBR
Single family homes, because we did receive a lot of
Sure, sure, I'm happy to do
requests.
that. Yep.
And there was an interest in SRM. There were other comments.
And I have some material to present for this, I prepared for this based on the comments we got, if that's all right with you, Mayor Kuhn.
Please go ahead.
So you need to go to the line analysis, please. Thank you. When we started this process, we actually had, our consultant actually did this analysis, which this shows the non-conforming parcels according to minimum lot size. This was not in your packet, by the way. So he did this citywide, but I'm just excerpting the ones here from Middleton Beach Road and also captured the ones in the Baskerville neighborhood. So in red are the non-conforming lots that are don't meet the minimum area of R1 zoning, 7,200 square feet. As you can see, and as you've heard from the comments from the public, many of the lots on Middleton Beach Road do meet that standard, but that's by virtue of the fact that they are very long lots, west to east. They aren't always, in most cases don't, in fact, no cases really meet our minimum lot width. Well, very few cases. That's the next slide, actually. So, so this next analysis shows the non-conforming as to a 60-foot lot width. And there's at least one error here because I found one today that looked awfully wide and I measured it and it seems like it's 60 feet. Maybe it was 59 point whatever. So that's why it came up as red. And yeah, the one that she's circling. But basically none of the lots on Middleton Beach Road are meet the minimum lot width of 60 feet.
For the current zoning.
Under current zoning, correct, correct. So my point and the reason why we selected SRH and we were open to SRM zoning, planning staff are, but the reason we did because the building envelope for Middleton Beach Road lots is constrained further, not just by the lot dimensions, but also by the presence of a sewer easement. And as a result, the building form that those properties have taken is quite dense. I mean, the lots are, the buildings in many cases are less than 10, about 10 feet or 9.5 feet apart. And so when you look at the street, it's as dense as there's few streets in Middleton that are more densely have housing more densely compacted. So that's why we didn't think the SRH was out of line. We also proposed SRH because we were trying to minimize the creation of non-conforming lots. So SRM requires a minimum lot width of 50 feet. And the majority of the lots, the vast majority, are about 40 feet. So this map, if it were redone with SRM zoning, would still have a lot of red on it. It would have very little non-red. So the effect of SRM versus SRH is quite minimal in terms of what the difference is between the two. The biggest one is impervious surface area. SRM allows or has a maximum impervious area of 60%. SRH is 70%. We then looked at some sort of spot checked if you scroll down, we just spot checked a few random lots to see that looked like they had more impervious area. And intentionally, I didn't put the addresses with these because it's irrelevant.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't even know whose lot is whose. So this one, for example, had 57% lot coverage based on a rough GIS analysis. There's some, please understand, it's not exact. And the lot width here is 40 feet. The next one is 64%. So that would not conform with SRM zoning, which allows only 60%. 58% for the next one. I think there was one more after that, 63%. So the problem with going with SRM, especially if you look at this lot here, is there's never going to be any sort of flexibility to add an addition, and maybe there shouldn't be, and that's maybe the testimony you heard today, but this is not going to, it's going to be legally conforming according to our new code, but any sort of addition or is not going to be allowed.
They couldn't increase.
They couldn't increase.
They could not increase the impervious surface ratio.
Right. And the idea that SRH is a down zoning, I disagree with that, because if you did SRL, which originally was advocated by a couple of people, would only allow 50% impervious surface area, and it would require a minimum side setback of 8 feet, which just does not work for almost everyone on Middleton Beach Road because of their narrow lots. So actually you would be taking some rights away that residents currently have. And that to me is more likely along the lines of a down zoning than, so I think it's the opposite actually. That said, SRM versus SRH, the only difference is impervious area. The side setback is 5 feet in both scenarios. Currently our code under R1 zoning allows for a 40-foot lot, 4 feet 8 inches. So it's a difference of 4 inches. So we just 5 feet is, similar enough. If the neighborhood prefers SRM, which we heard several speakers today, we have no objection to that. The three of us here, we talked about it, and that's fine with us. It does limit potential redevelopment. It limits people it keeps them at 60%, and maybe that's what is appropriate here. So if you want to change it to SRM, we have no objection to that, but I would strongly recommend against SRL.
I would support the the SRM just based on the requests that we heard. I too am not quite sure I understand the logic of the SRH becoming a down zoning, but we're going to have non-conforming lots there no matter what. They're all non-conforming to R1 now. Making non-conforming SRM lots doesn't seem to be a problem, and it does give us some maybe more reasonable limitation on the amount of impervious surface ratio on the lots.
Any other passionate comments from commissioners? All right, I'm going to ask, I see the president of MBR is here. I would like you to come to the microphone, state your name and address, and I'd like to ask you a clarifying question. State your name, please.
Did I understand you right that you said,
Ma'am, can you state your name and address?
I'm sorry,
State your name and address.
I'm Ginny Corwin at 2319 Middleton Beach Road.
And you have a clarifying question? Go
I have
ahead.
a question for Mark.
Yeah.
Did you say that we would have more potential for, I don't know how you worded that, going with the HRM than or SRM rather than SRH?
Yes.
Long term.
For my notes, let's see how good I am at this. For my notes, he said the SRH would be a 70% impervious surface
Maximum, yeah.
maximum, and the SRM is a 60%.
Right.
So if the neighborhood is looking to shrink impervious surface, then as you had recommended in your memo today, the SRM would meet that goal. Is that accurate?
Yes, and I think that's how the neighbors generally feel, maybe not 100%, but the majority.
Okay, and after hearing his explanation, do you feel that that is still the same? Yes or no? That they would still prefer M?
So based on the discussion, do you support? Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
And all I was trying to point out with the photos we showed is that there are cases where people have developed their properties greater than 60%. And you may have residents in the future, property owners in the future, who when they come in for a building permit are going to find out they can't do what their neighbor did. So I'm just pointing that out with our discussion here, that that's what's likely to happen. And, or I shouldn't say likely, but it could happen.
Yeah.
And we are going to be with SRM, pointing out what the rules are and be very strict about the 60% impervious, because we'll have that as a standard and we'll be requiring that on site plans. So that could affect somebody's ability to have a garage along the street, as many people have, and it could limit their ability to also extend a driveway to the house that is on the other side of the sewer easement, because that's going to add impervious area. So I'm just cautioning that this could have some people who are not pleased with the zoning change. But if that's what the neighborhood wants, that's a council decision.
I think
Also review the setbacks, the side setbacks.
The side setbacks are the same between SRM and SRH. It's 5 feet. So that's why it's not really that big of a change. The biggest change is the impervious area from dropping 10%.
I think based on the many emails that I received, that there is a very large concern about green space and nature and stormwater, and making sure there's places to grab that everywhere we can. So for that reason, I am comfortable with the SRM, and I appreciate you coming up and answering my clarifying questions. Any other comments on that topic? Hearing none.
Consensus to change the map? Is that the consensus to change the map?
I won't object to changing the map. I do feel, I just want to clarify, so the houses we just saw, if any of those wanted to redevelop or make a significant change, they might, like, let's say the 64%, they would be out of compliance and have to get rid of some pavement or, well, they couldn't replace pavement right now with pervious pavers because that's still impervious.
The ordinance will treat this as legally conforming.
Until they do something to change it.
Right.
And that's where I agree that we've heard, a lot from the neighbors that stormwater is a concern and wanting to have less impervious surfaces. It seems to me the big concern we were hearing was the possibility that this was a down zoning and would somehow make their property less valuable. And I think we've established that is not the case. And so I guess I would ask that the neighbors with this new information think about whether you really want the medium, because it seems to me you have more flexibility with SRH than you would with the SRM to not have to change the amount of impervious surfaces if somebody either couldn't or didn't want to when they redevelop or make a significant change.
Yeah, I have a concern about an entire street being out of compliance for future development. And I think that there are ways to strengthen the stormwater management instead, where we work on improving the permeability of the pervious surfaces, right? With rain gardens or something else. I don't know that having an entire street out of compliance, already out of compliance, would do anything for stormwater management. It's just going to create a lot of headaches for future development.
Thank you for sharing that, Commissioner Urban Hermans. Yeah, it's always a challenge, so I appreciate that. Any other comments? And it sounds like we may just have to circle back to that topic.
Well, I mean, I think in the meantime, based on what I've heard, we're showing it as SRM in the minutes that we authorized that change.
A
That you're
few of
authorizing that
us
change.
are okay with that. I don't know if it's all of us, so.
I don't know that we took any kind of,
Well, that's why I'm asking.
vote. Yeah. I guess maybe we ought to call the question, find out where everybody stands on it, so that we give direction. Otherwise, unless we just want to let the neighborhood reconvene, confirm their desire as a street, and then come back. Because I don't think the commission, as I understand it, I don't think the commission is strong one, or the staff's strong one way or the other, whether it's SRM or SRH.
I think that's wise, yeah. I'd be okay with either, but there's consequences to changing it to the medium density. So maybe the neighborhood should think about it now that they have more information.
So I'll go back to saying we should probably circle back on this topic at the next meeting, and hopefully that will give time to the neighborhood association to come up and provide a final email to the planning and to the.
Maybe a simple, if I just may in one sentence, Jenny, suggest a simple email that says, would residents on the street, would anyone object to capping impervious area at 60%? That's the simple 60% versus 70%. That's the effect. That's all it is.
Yes, but I think it has to be noted that there are several, if not many, properties that currently exceed the 60%.
Right, fair enough.
And that this new zoning would limit the ability to do any kind of improvements, additional improvements at all.
Yeah, duly noted.
Yeah.
Okay. With that being done, any
Back
other
to the memo?
Yes, I think that would be wise. So if you are here for just the MBR
Well,
for that section.
there's also Allen Boulevard, which I don't know how you want to address that.
I feel like we need to get through the
other
memo.
topics.
My thought was that everything we received that was in the packet, ideally, we'd be able to talk about tonight. Looking at the time, I question whether that's going to happen before we all run out of brain power. Yeah, we're at number
Let's
5.
circle back to the memo. I do appreciate everyone taking a pause because that gives time to our neighborhood who is concerned, and they can have a good, healthy conversation and bring that back. So Mark, can you continue with permitted and conditional uses in light and medium industrial districts?
Sure. This one's pretty quick, I think. The suggestion was from a couple sources, was to clarify that personal professional services and indoor sales and service are currently listed as conditional uses. Originally, we had proposed them as permitted uses, and then we, because of the concerns that were raised, suggested conditional uses. But now the suggestion is remove them altogether, so that it doesn't dilute the intent of the light and medium industrial districts. And we have no objection to that. I would support that. I just want to see if the Plan Commission agrees. And I would add to that, the first part of that memo, the first part of that section, that incidental office is actually allowed as an accessory function. So it doesn't have to be specifically called out as a permitted use or conditional use. So based on that, I had no objection to the suggestions.
I agree with the change that Mr. Paulson suggested.
Can we move on? 6.
Yep.
Granting variances for exterior building design standards. Actually, there was additional, I think I got something from our consultant today about this. Our consultant said something to the effect of that the language was linked to statutory language.
And I believe he said that if we did want to relax it, obviously we would have to discuss more about the details of, you know, how we would determine, you know, how these design standards could be relaxed. But that's also something we can, you know, add later on after this ordinance is adopted as well.
Not sure I understand then. Let's, where does the staff land on that then? Help me out.
I'm just looking for Ben's communication on it.
I'm wondering if the commenter would be willing to clarify this one. Because it's just reading the comment received in the staff memo, it sounds like the standard should be relaxed, but hearing the staff just now makes it sound like it's not as easy as that.
Staff is tired.
Again, Kurt Paulson, 6921 Ramsey Road. Thank you. Within zoning ordinances, it's customary to have area dimensions and use dimensions for which a variance does trigger the state law about unnecessary hardship that goes to the zoning board of appeals. But as the draft ordinance makes clear, many of the design standards are actually able to be subject to waivers or modifications by the Plan Commission, which is consistent with what other cities do. So for example, in the same section, you allow waivers of some of the parking and circulation requirements by Plan Commission based on site plan review. So since it's written in the ordinance as a waiver of a design standard, it's not a variance. I think the problem is once you put the word variance in, that triggers state law about zoning variances being an unnecessary hardship. So I think there's a kind of mistake cut and paste of that language. I think what you want to do is for design standards, to say what you want, but allow the Plan Commission to waive those modifications based on a building plan, a site plan where someone meets the intent, but maybe uses a different material or a different way of achieving those design standards.
It does.
It does. Thank you.
We're good. Thank you.
So staff, the concern seems to, or the problem seems to be the use of the word variance.
Right.
Can you redraft that to get at what Mr. Paulson was just saying? Because unless any commissioners object to going in that direction of relaxing the standard. It could be.
Yep, we can do it.
Then we can circle back next week. Next time, not next week. Next top is the request from towns of Middleton and Springfield for additional changes to air district.
Yeah, this was actually in response to the second letter that they had sent us. And, obviously I worked on staffing the airport commission for a number of years. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, maybe some of you didn't know that. So I was going based on trying to find a common ground addressing the concerns that were raised in the letter. But at this point, Council Member Lorman, who spoke to you tonight, is trying to make arrangements to have the airport commission have a special meeting to take this up as well. And our administrator has asked the Bureau of Aeronautics to weigh in on this. I don't expect there to be any heartburn about these, but there's, if they want to get that input, that's fine. All of these changes are centered on the idea that we don't want to violate our grant assurances, that we want to make sure that buildings are used for aeronautical purposes. So if there's I just wanted to pass along to you that these were the edits I was proposing to try and address the concerns. Heliport is the one that is outstanding. In particular, the concern being that the concern of attracting more helicopter use at the airport. I mean, helicopters have every right to use the airport now, and they do use it. MedFlight in particular comes out here and buys fuel sometimes and has been based out here when there's been activity at the hospital. Interestingly, I want to add that these land use categories listed here are simply the same land use categories that are found everywhere in the zoning ordinance. So this is actually quite unusual to add clarifying language to this section. It's the only place in the ordinance where we have done that, where we are adding qualifiers. So the simplest solution would be not to have any qualifiers, but again, trying to find common ground. So heliport is also found as a land use in several other, 6 other zoning districts as conditional uses. So it's not like we're just simply focused on the airport here. That's my background.
Alder Hanaro.
So may not be obvious to you, but I used to be on the airport commission my first year as an alder. So I've studied a lot of these issues. And I'm also very mindful of the need for us to, when we can, cooperate with our neighbors in the towns. I have a lot of questions. I think it's great that the Airport Commission is going to have a special meeting to review this. I would like to attend it if I can, but in case I can't, here are the things that I noted in the suggested changes. First of all, the additional language on the previous page, Mark, all of which shall be aviation related and directly pertain to operations at Middleton Municipal Airport, Maury Field. Is that sentence intended to say they will be by definition aviation related if these land uses are at the airport, or these land uses will only be allowed if they are directly related to aviation? Do you see the difference?
I'm sorry, I read what you, and I was listening, but I didn't understand the difference.
I'm wondering if this, all of which shall be aviation related and directly pertain to operations at the airport, is that intended to be a statement that makes the office, the indoor maintenance service, the outdoor open space institution, all these land uses, we're declaring them to be aviation related because they would be at our airport, or we're saying they'd only be allowed at the airport if they were aviation?
The latter.
I think that needs to be crystal clear. I have a real concern about a hangar. Well, I'll get to, I guess we'll go to item 3 on the page. Restaurants, taverns, and indoor commercial entertainment shall be incorporated within a hangar or terminal building. I totally see the value of having a coffee shop or something at the terminal building, but when we have a shortage of hangar space, I don't know why we would consider allowing a restaurant or a tavern to be located within a hangar, and no matter what the percentage is. And I also wonder what the BOA and FAA think of that,
And I appreciate your question. And again, what I was doing was trying to think of how the airport is used today, and how it's been used and how it is used and how it could be used. We know that both of the largest operators at the airport operate special events like weddings, fundraisers, community events, pancake breakfasts, things like that. Bands get hired, things like that. That to me is, entertainment. So the reason why restaurants, taverns, and indoor commercial entertainment are lumped together is that is the land use category that applies throughout the zoning code. So we can't just pick out a cafe. I can't just say the word cafe because the land use definitions are, we're trying to stick with consistent land use definitions throughout the code, land use terminology. So the reason why I said within a hangar or terminal building is because I know that hangar buildings are currently for special events. That was where the thinking is coming from.
But is that a zoning thing or a special event permit.
I mean, it
thing.
could be, that's fine. It could be,
'Cause
but frankly, given how much the airport has been scrutinized and given that there's been efforts to find every little thing to cause the airport trouble, I didn't want to add language here that would then call into question an existing activity that's occurring at the airport, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm gonna
Yeah.
pause us for a moment. I want to say that I am fine with it going to the airport commission. And the reason is I was not on the airport commission, so I'm glad that you have such great ideas, and I want to continue hearing them. But before we go on, is others okay on the commission?
Yeah,
Please raise your hand if you can refer it. Okay, because they need to schedule the meeting, and I don't want that to be holding up a zoning approval process in December or into January. I want to make sure that they get that on the books. Now, in saying that, I would also love a coffee shop at the terminal, and I can understand your concern about within hangars.
Yeah, I agree.
But I appreciate that you're explaining that it's all lumped together. Please continue.
Thank you. And then the offsite parking lot, provided it helps support airport operations or activities. And I guess I'm wondering, can you provide an example? Like, what does that look like? If the airport, if a conditional use of the airport is to locate an offsite parking lot, doesn't offsite by definition indicate that the parking lot would be used for something that is not at the airport?
Yeah, that's a valid point. Very good point.
So I would suggest taking that out as
the definition of, I'd have to look up.
because again, and I go back to thinking like, what are we required to do as recipients of federal aid for the airport, and using the airport for something like offsite parking for Kiva or, or something else seems completely at odds with what we are supposed to be doing with the airport. So.
Well, and I think that was the example I was thinking of. I mean, there is a parking shortage. Kiva is a good example. And if there was ever someone saying, well, can we have parking at a underutilized airport? I would say it shouldn't be utilized for a non-airport purpose, but it should be available for the airport use as well. That was what I was trying to get at. So an off-street parking lot is defined as any area used for the temporary surface parking of vehicles which are fully registered, licensed, and operable, et cetera. No, it's pretty vague, but I mean, that's all it says. So your point, Commissioner Haniro, is completely, I understand completely where you're coming from. I was just, again, trying not to be overly restrictive, trying to anticipate what potential future circumstances may arise, because there are areas of the airport that are not usable for anything because they can't have buildings on them. But if there's a desire to have them used for parking, for overflow parking, as long as they're also available for airport use, I think that would be consistent with our grant assurances. I love the idea of having the airport commission look at it. I think that's probably the best way to handle this, and we've given them a draft to react to.
Can I ask if item H under the principal uses permitted by right, the reference to small scale utilities, that covers the solar?
Yeah, small scale public. Yeah, that's the sort of, well, and MG&E installations and things like that. I'll look that on up too.
Okay, and then finally, just briefly on the heliport idea, I get the, I would be inclined, as long as what you say in your memo is true, that we can't prohibit a helicopter from operating at the airport. For that reason, I'd be inclined to take heliport out because it is something that we can, it's a way to show that we're being good neighbors to the town and accepting a comment, and it's not going to actually have a material impact on the use of the airport. But I understand from Alderwoman's comments that that's probably not going to be something the Airport Commission will support, but I hope they will at least consider it. A bigger question, though, is why is, again, I'm thinking we're trying to make sure the airport can succeed. So why would we encourage other zoning districts, businesses in other zoning districts to develop a heliport and not use our airport for that purpose? It
Great
doesn't
question.
seem to me like we're demonstrating our desire to see the airport generate business if we're allowing businesses nearby to establish their own heliports.
I know heliports exist on hospitals, for example. So I think that's probably where the idea came from is that, I mean, this wasn't language that this came from our consultant this way. So to be honest, I didn't even notice that heliport was a conditional use in these other districts until I did a word search and said, oh, plus it's in the table. It's not something I'd ever focused on until we got the comment. So if we're going to discuss helicopter use at the airport, then it makes sense that we're discussing it all the other land uses in the city. But I know that the hospital is an example, and maybe there's other businesses, maybe there's others that have heliports. I don't know.
But again, are we trying to encourage use of the airport or not? Because if we are, we shouldn't be encouraging the development of heliports anywhere except perhaps a hospital where it would be immediately necessary. But we don't have a hospital right now. And we can revisit the code if and when a hospital goes in. So that's.
I'm going to say thank you for that. The heliport did surprise me. I'll be honest. I know planes are helicopter. I'm getting tired too. Look at that. The helicopters land at the airport often for fueling, but that we're out of space as it is, to try and land planes. So I don't foresee a heliport going in there because it is larger to do a proper one. And I like how you commented that if we are fostering that environment of having an airport, then focusing that traffic to that location seems the most reasonable to move forward. Of course, if there's a future hospital, future councils can have that discussion, but I think there's plenty in Madison. So I'm gonna try and keep it light for a little bit. Heliports. Who knew we would be talking heliports on a Tuesday?
So thank you, commissioners, for indulging me.
So are you asking us to remove heliport as a land use from the code altogether?
I would do it from the code altogether, knowing that basically all the things that go into heliport operations are going to be allowed at the airport. If the airport commission feels strongly, what can I do?
They could put one line back in. Maybe there's something about
I mean,
hospitals in there.
an advantage of taking out heliport entirely is paragraph 4 goes away.
There you go.
Well, that's why I'm asking the question.
Yeah.
If that's what you're asking, then
I would seriously consider it and have the airport commission take a look at it.
okay. It'd be on the choppering block.
See, and they say all we do is make it longer. Found a spot. All right, what's our next topic? Treatment of flags and feather signs. Hot topics, my friends. We're getting towards 10, so take it away.
I'll just assume you've read this and ask if you have any questions.
Yep. Any questions?
I just have a question about why would we not allow more than one feather sign on a lot if it's a temporary thing? I'm picturing like vote here or because we've all seen the feather signs where it's like different things on the different feather signs. Maybe some people think that's tacky, but it's only a temporary thing. So why would we regulate something like that?
This is what we currently allow, right? One feather sign per lot. Is that what we currently allow?
I can't even remember what we allow currently versus what's in the code anymore. It's all confusing.
I see.
Yeah.
I see.
But
I thought that
I defer to my colleague to my right, who probably has a better memory than I do. Our proposed code would have We regulate, the answer to your question is we regulate temporary signs. We don't really describe what kind of sign they are. We just say a temporary sign is supposed to have a permit, which generally doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And the future category would not require a permit, by the way, putting into practice what happens. But we regulate temporary signs by 10 days versus 21 days, depending on the size. That's how we regulate it. So I didn't mean to be flippant about it, not remembering. But the new ordinance would say sign permit not required, 1 per lot. It talks about setbacks and 8 square feet maximum area, 6 foot maximum height. That's how it reads. It doesn't, I don't remember what the duration is for a temporary.
I'll just say that when I read the paragraph and I thought it was all
10
reasonable.
consecutive days. A sign shall only be displayed for up to 10 consecutive days, once per calendar quarter, and only during the hours of operation for the on-site land use. So let's use a multi-tenant building like on University Avenue. We have several of them. So if that's Older Janeiro, what you're referring to, there's, let's say 10 businesses in each building. Should they each be allowed to put up a feather flag? I have no problem with that. But they are limited to 10 days, once per calendar, 10 consecutive days, once per calendar quarter, and only during the hours of operation for on-site land use. If that's what you want, I have no concern.
I'm not asking, I'm personally, I don't want to see a proliferation of the feather signs, and I liked your treatment in the memo. But if Alder Janeiro feels strongly.
Not gonna follow my sword for a feather sign. Do something with that.
I've had done my share.
All right, I think this is good guidance. I think we're getting you there.
Wow.
Yes, and I hear both sides. Outdoor lighting, various issues.
But I didn't.
No,
What's the resolution?
I'm fine. I'm
They're
fine.
sticking
with-
We're sticking with it.
Okay. All right. Outdoor lighting. So there's a lot of suggestions here that came from a combination of our neighbor in Cross Plains and I think one of our local developers, Terrence Wall also. So lowering the lumens from 1600 to 800. Do you support lowering the light output? I guess that's the first question.
If it's consistent with the dark sky principles, then yeah, I would go for that.
I haven't researched all this because a lot came in the last few days. So, okay.
Yeah, if we could circle back on that, and just so that we're in compliance, but I'm open to that, so that we are good neighbors.
Should the maximum height of a fixture be reduced? I guess in Cross Plains, they cap things at 16 feet in most districts. And Michael was noticing that we allowed 20 feet and 30 feet depending on the district. But Terrence Wall had suggested simply making it simpler and just regulate the number of lumens on the ground and don't even get into height at all. I can check with our consultant advice.
I like simple. Simple is good.
Simple is good.
So you prefer the Masson approach if that is okay. This is the issue of a buffer yard, which is, I assume you read it. So do you wish to not allow lights in the buffer area? Or are you concerned about a security issue?
I'm comfortable with the way it's written.
Any objection to that?
Can you clarify that, Alder Janeiro?
Well, the language on the screen, any permitted combination of, that defines what the buffer area is, or the buffer yard is. And we do not allow light, or the revised ordinance would not allow light fixtures in that buffer.
And that's the way you want it to remain?
I'm comfortable with it staying that way.
Is that how you feel, Commissioner Bruce?
And I would agree. I'm trying to If the,
I'll jump in for a moment
Yep.
while you think.
yep, yep.
I'm just thinking the the district that I used to represent has very small lots, as we've discussed. Off Middleton Beach Road and up the hill, same small lots. And we had a few situations where sometimes people had lights out and one was an Airbnb and then it was shining right into the next family's yards. And it took a lot longer to fix because it wasn't just neighbor to neighbor. So I think that's reasonable the way it's written. And another one was people were misunderstanding what the light was for, and they thought it was one felt it was security, but the other one felt it was too much into their privacy. So I think the buffer is healthy, is what I'm trying to say nicely. So please continue.
I was just wondering if there might be some, if there's any, can there be paving or walkways in the buffer yards? Because there you would want to have the ability to have that lit. An exit pathway on a side yard or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that this language pertains specifically to, I'd have to look specifically in the code again. I think if you have walkway lighting, that's different. I think this was talking about.
Okay.
I'd have to check.
Yeah, that's the only, that would be my only concern. Otherwise, I'm fine with it as it's written.
It's a good clarifying point. Thank you for sharing.
I have a question, well, two questions.
Yeah.
Was this pertaining only to commercial property or anywhere? I'm seeing institutional, mixed use avenue, mixed use urban. Because I think it feels different if it's in a neighborhood, neighbor to neighbor, as you were saying, Mayor, versus, the backlot of an industrial area.
That's a fair
That's one comment. And then the other one is, could there be something like the ability to have motion sensor light so that in the case that something was moving around, you wouldn't normally have light, but you could light something up for security purposes at the moment.
So to answer at least one of your questions, it looks like this is in our general outdoor lighting standard, so it would apply to basically every zoning district. And so it's under B, light fixtures shall not be located within required buffer yards or minimum setbacks.
Okay, and your second question, Commissioner Erdman Hermans?
Yeah, I mean, I think I see some value in light for security, even in a buffer yard. And I think I like the idea of allowing motion sensor as some sort of happy medium to keep everybody having their lighting needs met.
I am neutral on that, just as long as it's not constant. I'm open-minded.
I'd be open to that.
Something we can circle back on.
Okay.
Let them see
Look into
language.
that.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that.
Foot candles, I don't really have an opinion. I mean, 0.5 seems like a good number, but, and there is a place in the ordinance where we require a minimum of 0.4. So to suddenly have a minimum also be the maximum seems a little challenging. So I guess I would recommend keeping it at 0.5. It's a standard we've been using. But that's what I would do.
I wonder, where does it refer to 0.4?
As a minimum?
Mm-hmm.
I just remember coming across that yesterday when I wrote this part of the memo. Daphne's looking.
Again, I hear all the time from my constituents that they're very concerned about light pollution. So I think the more we can do to address that concern, And, you know, maybe it's because I live in a district where the Conservancy is right next door that people think about this so much.
Yeah, just as a general, like living in the area comment, I tried to go stargazing with my kids last night at 6:30 because it's already dark. And we had to drive very far to Pope Farm Park to see the stars. And even there was a huge amount of light from the new school that's there. It's like how far out do you have to go to see the stars anymore?
So the area it's located, it's on page, Daphne, it's on page 5 of the lighting ordinance.
Okay.
At the top, under F. So there it is. Vehicle parking shall provide areas at a minimum of 0.4 foot candles.
And why is that 0.4 foot candles?
I don't know.
Because could we make that 0.3? Would that provide enough light for security purposes or, you know, for parking, loading, circulation?
It's possible that this is from our current lighting code, which I don't have handy right now, but I don't know if this is a template from Vanderwall or if this is based on what we had in our current lighting code. I'd have to check.
Can we find out? Because
It'd be nice to know, yeah, how do we determine what is the minimum and then, you know, and then use that, but just a random number that somebody pulled from somewhere doesn't give me a lot of confidence that that should be our minimum.
And so we could circle back on that one as well and make us a more.
Yep. And maybe the commenter who made the suggestion to drop it to 0.4, he might have an example of an ordinance where their minimum is sufficient.
Okay.
I'm just gonna make a general comment. Seems like we're losing steam and having to circle back quite a bit. I'm wondering if it now would be a time to take a break and maybe reconvene at another time.
I always like a good suggestion like that. That's a good.
May
Are
I?
we about done with lighting?
I was gonna say, we'll support that as long as we just knock out the last couple of lighting things.
Sure.
And finish this page.
Sure.
Sounds great.
Well, and I really would like your feedback on number 10 too.
All right. Can you maybe tell us 10 so we can think about it?
The reducing the dimensional standard. In fact, let's do that quickly,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
Let's plow through lighting because I think this will be
All right.
really easy.
Go.
So eliminating downward lighting requirement for flags seems that, you know, desirable to have downward lighting, but totally understand why it's difficult to do.
Can we go back on screen to? Oh, yes.
Mark's memo.
Thank you.
The rendering of color rendering of 3000 K or less that we already talked about. It seemed like we were going in.
I think
Oh,
I'd like to get,
yes.
can you have our consultant just weigh in on that?
Yeah,
But-
we will.
Yeah.
And then the last one was the building lighting. Terrence Wall obviously has done quite a bit of this on his buildings and he's interested in continuing to do so. My understanding from your previous discussion a month ago was that you wanted to de-emphasize or not, or you were comfortable with the language as drafted.
Yep, we've settled that one. And Mark, when you reach out to Ben to ask about the these lighting related items, you know, to what, in my mind, if Madison is doing it in their new lighting ordinance, we should emulate that. And so I guess I would wonder, what does Madison have for allowed lighting?
Okay.
To color.
All right.
Also, that just so you know, there was a great presentation at a recent Chamber of Commerce meeting. They had a speaker. Yeah. And so if you need some examples, I can dig up notes from that. It was a third party nonprofit or something.
Museum of Natural History in DC, Smithsonian has a whole exhibit on dark skies right now. I went through and it was fascinating 2 weeks ago
Fabulous.
Yeah.
We'll talk over coffee.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
at the airport.
All right, so number 10, further adjustments to dimensional standards in certain zoning districts.
So this one for SRH surface from Red Tail Ridge. And our consultant has no objection to this, reducing the lot depth from 100 to 85 feet. It changes the ratio, so remember 3,000 square feet is the minimum lot size. The minimum depth is 100 feet. The minimum lot width is 30. So 100 times 30, that's where the 3,000 came from. So this affects that. But obviously there's other ways to make up area. So he had no objection to this. I assume you don't either. Is that okay?
That's okay.
And then the same with, but this goes back to what I said at the beginning of the meeting with Red Tail Ridge. I'm recommending that we change or decrease these from 10,000 square feet to 8,000 for MRL, low density, and the width from 25 to 20. To try and give us some more flexibility with the market, frankly, is proposing this. So the widths of some of those lots were 22 to 23 feet.
I would agree.
Okay, thank you. And then Lycon, I'm taking the advantage of just plowing through this. We met.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
I thought we were ending after.
Oh, did you want to end? Okay.
After
we're
items 1 through
stopping.
10.
Yes.
Yeah.
We
In fact,
are tired. And
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I may move that we adjourn.
Yes, I will adjourn. Everyone have a great night.
Thank you.